pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And may I have roll call, please?
All right. Mr. Fitzer?
Here.
Mr. Harrell?
Here.
Mr. Colbert?
Here.
Mr. Kucera?
Here.
Mr. Nushai?
Here.
Ms. Redmond?
Here.
Mr. Scott?
Here.
Mr. Solomon?
Here.
Mr. Watson?
Thank you. Agenda item number 4 is approval of the agenda. The approval of the current agenda in front of us now. Does anyone want to make any changes? Or if everybody's happy with it, I will accept it the way it is. Thank you. Agenda item number 5 is approval of the regular meeting minutes from March 14th, 2023.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from, I'm sorry, what date was that? March
14.
March
14th? I'm sorry. 2023.
Support.
Motion support. Any changes? Anybody see anything wrong? Seeing none, I'll take a roll call, please.
Mr. Colbert?
Here.
Mr. Kucera?
Here.
Mr. Nushai?
Yes.
Ms. Redmond?
Yes.
Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Solomon?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzer?
Yes.
Mr. Harrell?
Yes.
All right, motion carries.
Thank you. Agenda item number 6 is public discussion, items not on the agenda. If anyone from the public would like to come up and say anything, you're more than welcome. Please give us your name and your address.
Is this regarding the project to put the family condos in? Project number 08100419. I had put together an email address to everyone up there, the city manager, kind of voicing our concerns, which I believe are also concerns of our other neighbors, and I just wondered if anybody had a chance to look that over and had anything to offer on that.
Personally, I never saw an email. Did you
I
send it
have
to the
not
planning commission?
Oh, I did. I sent it to the city council. Okay.
We're
We're all neighbors that are going to be behind this condo going up, and we're not happy. I mean, it's just going to ruin our privacy, and we just want to know how the city is going to take us into consideration when this goes up. We would like some trees and privacy or bushes or whatever, and there's a light factor. There's Oscar who lives where this drive is going to be, and I don't know.
I understand.
I will put my email and reissue it. I guess I didn't realize I put it to the council meeting.
Yeah, if you go to the
members.
city page and go to planning commission.
I will do that.
It'll send it to all of us at that
Okay.
time.
Okay.
Okay.
So there's going to be more meetings on this, I know, right?
That's questionable. Right now, I'm confused because it says public discussion items not on the agenda, and our attorney's not here, so I don't know if we're supposed to be discussing this now.
Has this been approved?
No, this is the first time they've come in for a site plan approval.
Okay, I'll give you a copy of what I did send them, and I'll resend it.
Okay, thank you.
I didn't give you my name. It's on there, Carol Downs.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I see you have this property on the agenda, so should we wait and speak of it after that, after the site plan for it?
That's apparently the way it's supposed to go, is you can...
Yeah, well, we don't know. Let's be real. Okay, so it says review of site plan 436, 456. Would you like me to hold until you do that line?
Yes, I think it doesn't say on here, we have a public discussion now for items not on the agenda, and it doesn't have another public, which normally it does on my agenda. So I will make a point of, let's have some discussion here first on the site plan approval, see how it plays out, and then at some point in time, I will open it up to public.
Tonight, you mean?
Yes, if you
Thank
guys want to come up and
Okay,
say
thank
something
you.
at that point. I think that's only fair, I think.
So do we need to take a step back and modify the agenda to add a section for items not on the agenda, public comment for items not on the agenda?
You mean on the agenda?
On the agenda.
On the agenda.
That, yes, thank you.
And that's typically,
You want to insert it now? If we insert it, let's insert it as agenda item number 7A.
Very well.
We'll stick it in between 7 and 8. That way people can have their say right after we're done talking about it, and they don't have to stay for our capital improvement program, which is not of great interest to them. So we'll put it in there.
do we need it by way of motion, or is it okay?
Yeah.
Nick,
You can't allow public comment during the agenda item too.
pardon?
You can allow public comment during the agenda item. It's-
We don't need to make a
At
motion.
the discretion of the chair, yeah, so if you choose to, you can do that during the agenda
I can just open up,
item.
but we don't need a
Yeah,
motion, and we don't need to vote on that.
modify your agenda.
Okay, thank you. Okay, does anyone else in public want to say anything not on the agenda? Seeing none, I will then close public discussion. We'll move on to agenda item number 7, which is the review of the site plan at 436 to 456 West 14 Mile. And Mr. Tangeri, want to walk us through this?
Nick's going to throw a presentation up on the screen here. I think they may actually have a presentation of their own too, but this just has like the site plan and a couple other things that we can use by way of illustration. Go ahead, you can move on to the, okay. So that's just the site. Anybody watching at home can see that. So this is what's there right now. It's 436 to 456 West 14 Mile. It's 3 houses at the moment. The zoning district is RM1 multifamily, and they're proposing a multifamily complex on the site. Site's 0.571 acres, and it fronts on 14 Mile Road. There's a driveway on the neighboring site to the east that comes onto this lot. It's a little unclear as to whether or not there's ever been any kind of easement that allows that, or if it's just a longstanding encroachment, but the applicant's aware of it. We look at the surrounding sites. To the north, everything is zoned R2. It's all single-family homes. To the west, everything is zoned RM1 along 14 Mile Road, and there is a single-family home there now, immediately to the west. To the south, across West 14 Mile Road, is B3, that's commercial zoning. And then to the east, the place of worship to the east is also zoned RM1. So I got a general description of their proposal. They are proposing to take down those houses that are there and then put in, oh, it looks like I forgot to update the bullets there on the number 1, but number 3 has them updated. 3 efficiency units, 4 one-bedroom units, and 7 two-bedroom units is what they're proposing. And there's, of course, a parking lot to go along with that. So the next portion of the letter goes over the dimensional requirements of the district. The minimum lot area and width are met. The height limit for the district is met. It's 30 feet, and they're at 29 feet 10 inches. They are meeting the front setback, the west side setback, the rear setback, the minimum setback of the district on the east side, but there's also a calculated setback that's not being met on that east side. And the calculated setback is 27.5 feet, and they've got 20, which is the minimum of the district. The density, so 1 room is permitted per 1,000 square feet of lot area in the RM1 district. And I've laid out kind of what each of the unit types equates to in terms of number of rooms. So 3 efficiency units are 1 room each, and those are 3 rooms total. This is all in our ordinance. So 4 one-bedroom units counts as 2 rooms each, so that's 8 rooms. And 7 two-bedroom units is also 2 rooms each, that counts as 14 rooms. So the applicant's proposing a total of 25 rooms. And the lot on which the development is proposed is 24,898 square feet. So it's a little shy of 25,000, which means that 24 rooms are what's permitted on the lot. When we look at the off-street parking, there is a different requirement for each of these types of units. There's 1 for each efficiency unit, 1.5 for each 1-bedroom unit, and 2 for each 2-bedroom unit, which adds up to a total of 23 spaces. They've shown 21 on the plan with 2 kind of penciled in, which they're asking to defer construction of at this time. They also have communicated to the city that they're seeking a shared parking agreement with the property to the east, which is that place of worship, and I will let them speak to that. They have the correct dimensions on their parking spaces and maneuvering lanes. The minimum floor area per unit meets the ordinance. They have a dumpster enclosure that meets the standards of the ordinance. It's sort of kind of in the northwest corner of the lot. That has a 6-foot-high enclosure wall. The screen wall along the northern property line, the zoning ordinance requires a 4.5-foot-tall screening wall, and that is what they're showing. The single-family home to the west has the RM1 zoning, so the wall's not required on that property line. Landscaping, they have green belt. So there's a 10-foot green belt provided along the north property line adjacent to the R2 district. That requires just advance my page there. Requires 1 evergreen tree and 2 shrubs provided for every 30 feet of property line. The green belt is interrupted by that dumpster enclosure, so that's something you're going to need to discuss with them. West side, there's not technically a green belt required there. They're providing the same green belt on that side as they are on the north property line. And they've got the same evergreens every 30 feet with shrubs in between. When we look at the street frontage, we require 1 deciduous tree per 30 feet of linear frontage, and that's what they're showing. And they are providing a couple of shrubs in between each pair of trees. They've not proposed any signage at this point. That's a separate application. Lighting, they show 2 fixtures. One's on the building and one's on a pole. They're both at a height of 18 feet, which is compliant with our height limit. They have pedestrian circulation via a sidewalk that connects to the sidewalk along 14 Mile, which is going to be rebuilt as part of the proposal, if approved. Parking lot's accessed from West 14 Mile Road via a single driveway. The driveway that crosses onto the eastern portion of the property from the neighboring site doesn't actually provide access to this site. It provides access around the building to the east. The other agencies have indicated, DPW, Police and Fire have indicated that they don't have any particular issues with what's being proposed here. And then you do have an engineering letter as well from AEW. So we do have to resolve some non-compliance issues here. The Planning Commission has a few different ways of going about that. There is, of course, you can always, of course, discuss with them your opinion of the non-compliance issues. If you were inclined to approve, you could do that contingent on granting of variances or have them go to the ZBA first and come back to you. So they're intending to seek variances on that 1 room over the maximum and the calculated east setback. So if you do have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them, and then if not, we can go to the applicant.
So pretty much everything on here is going to be restricted unless they get these variances from the ZBA, correct?
That's correct, yeah.
So that's going to have to be mandatory.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, any other questions for?
Yeah, I do. So the screen wall up to RM1, I've seen a lot of conflicting numbers between our ordinance and the two different letters that we have. Is it supposed to be 6-foot tall wall?
So the ordinance requires a 4-foot, 6-foot tall wall.
4 foot, 6 foot, or 4 foot, 6 inch?
4 foot, 6, sorry, 4
Okay.
foot 6 inch. 4 foot, 6 foot would be 10 feet, so that would be a very tall wall. Yeah, 4 foot 6 inches, I'm sorry. I believe they had a 6-foot wall on their original plan and revised it.
Okay, and for, I thought that there was somewhere that it identified, even if it's not zoned residential, but there's a residential home there, that there should be a wall, a screening wall, abutting if the parking lot, so that the headlights aren't constantly shining into that neighboring property?
Right, that is something that we can discuss with them. It's not a requirement necessarily, but we can certainly discuss with them what some options might be for that.
Okay. I don't want to keep going. If other people have questions, you can feel free to hop in.
You're fine.
Okay. I also, I know the last time, I think it was the same company was in front of us, they had trash. It seems to be backing right up into residential. I'm not a big fan. I know we don't have anything in our ordinance on that, but it would seem like that would cause rats, other disturbances that I wouldn't necessarily like. With that said, I realize that they don't really have opportunity to put it in front of their building. I'm not sure if they've discussed opportunity to have that somewhere else that's not interrupting. In, the green, so even at the thinnest part here, that's 10 feet of that green belt, or is it 10 feet? That's the width, right?
Yeah, it's 10 feet except where the dumpster enclosure is.
Except for, okay.
Or, well, it's more than that north of the building, but yeah.
And
by
do we
the
know, like, the
parking lot.
depth of that? Like, the depth of the, because it doesn't look like it's a very great green space to me. Do we know the depth in the total lot coverage in terms of green space versus impervious surfaces?
By the depth of that, you're referring to,
I'm sorry, the depth of the green space.
north of the building or north of the parking lot, because they're a little different.
Right, both.
So north of the parking lot, it'd be 10 feet except where the dumpster enclosure is. And then north of the building, it's 30 feet.
That's the depth, not the width, right?
Well-
From like the parking lot to the property line?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. I think depth, and I think I'm meaning the same thing by depth that you're meaning by width.
Okay.
The space between the building and the property line, and the space between the
Because when I
parking lot
read
and the property
width
line.
of 10 feet width, I was thinking, looking at the property, it had to be like 10 feet wide, but we don't have specifications on how deep that must be, I guess, or at least not that I,
Well,
look through.
it has to be 10 feet the whole way. That's the standard.
okay. What's the length then?
The whole-
Obviously,
the
do we
property line,
have?
the whole property line.
It is on here. We don't have a minimal property, like length of green space, correct?
It just has to be along the whole property line.
Oh, it does have to take,
Yeah,
okay, I'm sorry.
right.
All right, and then, I
So
think.
whatever the property line's length is the length of the green belt.
Of the whole green, okay.
Yeah.
Did we get numbers on the complete, the property, how much of the property is building versus green space?
Yes. Give me a moment.
I'm sorry?
It's hard to see the dimensions if they've got.
It is. I promise I tried on reading all 7 pages of it.
Let's see.
I don't see it in front of me, but I assume someone looked at the amount of permeable soil.
Well, that's just something that would usually be broken down, I thought, at the beginning, like the total lot coverage.
Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I've got it.
I mean, I see something on page 31 that roughly equates to what is about 24% green
Yeah,
space. But
that's
I
it.
look visually at the lot, and I can't believe that. It looks like there's a pee pad for a dog, and the rest of it's concrete, asphalt, and building.
Right. Well, which our
Well-
minimum, I believe, is 30%, right?
Yeah, lot cover, maximum
maximum, yeah,
lot
sorry.
coverage in
Yes.
this district is 30%, yeah.
But, I think we've only recently got our hands around that number, and the reality is we're in a combined sewer system with a significant prevalence for flooding and sewer backup, and we're not batting a 100 average on every resident in Clawson not having an overwhelming sewer condition during what we would say is 100-year floods that are happening more frequently than every 100 years. So I consider that very dangerous to take away as much green space as this plan intends to, even with the provisions for the basins, because you can't guarantee all the water goes into those basements. And from what I can tell, the grading just from the street view looks like a lot of it is grading into their neighbors, not into these basins or the street. So there's significant hazard there. And I appreciate you commenting, Joe, on the trees. That maybe it would be a net add in trees, but these trees are fence posts. I mean, they're not going to grow into anything other than the neighbor's fence or the pavement sitting next to it. I doubt they'd even grow, but, it looks good on the plan. But I have great concerns with losing the mature trees that we have. I recently learned from someone that trees absorb a great deal of rainfall, which is critical for us, so.
In the letter that you received from AEW, our Civil Engineering Department, their site plan comment number 3 states the applicant is proposing to provide a 100-year detention of the stormwater collected on-site with a controlled release rate into the existing city sewer, which I think we've made that mandatory with the PUD going in across the street here, and buildings are putting up large roofs, they're collecting a lot of water, and it's overrunning our sewer system, so we're putting in retention, collecting things for that. That seems to be okay.
Yeah.
Are you still questioning the amount of permeable soil?
Very much the permeable soil and the grading. So it's fine if the lowest point in the terrain is the site, and all of the neighboring perimeter properties, have nothing to worry about because the rain's just going to go in there. But if there's a delta in that elevation, you can't just assume all the water that was previously occupied by permeable surface and grass is going to go into that basin. You have to worry about runoff into other areas. So there's I don't think a lot of examples where we concentrated this much surface area of pavement and roof in such a small space, just from a rainwater perspective. I don't want to belabor
So
the
it's-
comment. I mean,
all of downtown, but 26.8% is the lot coverage. I just did all the math to confirm
Okay,
it,
thank you.
so.
I was a little bit off, so thank you.
So that falls within our 30, right?
It does fall within the 30%,
Okay.
yes.
So that's another variance
It is
then?
not a variance
No,
because it
no, they're
meets
fine.
the standard.
Oh, okay. Oh, right, it's below it. Okay. So we're only doing a fence right now, or not a
It's a
fence?
wall,
A
yeah,
wall.
wall.
Up against the R2 district, correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Because, again, I know that sometimes going through our ordinance, things can conflict, and it's like going down a rabbit hole. But again, I brought up that point with the residential next door, the height of the wall. Obviously, we'll hear from some neighbors about preferences and how they're feeling about that. Another portion of our ordinance asked for a low wall if it's, if part of the parking lot's on 14 Mile. Do you recall that part that I'm referring to?
We have a standard, trying to recall what section that's in. It's,
Yeah, the wall would step down.
it's like the BRD and Westgate districts require that.
Oh, it's just those districts that
yeah.
require, okay. Okay, good.
Can I ask a related question? Talking about the north wall being like, what, 4.5 feet? You said?
4.5 feet, yeah.
So there was 2 light posts that were 18 feet? Do you know the location?
There's one light post that's 18 feet and a light that is mounted at 18 feet in height on the building.
Do you know what's,
The location
sorry, it was hard to tell by
of
the
those
plans.
is, there is, if you're looking through the plans, I can tell you which sheet you'll find that on.
Okay.
It is close to the end.
I'm sure you get the gist of my
Oh,
question.
yeah, I
you know,
understand. I understand what you're asking, yeah.
For the neighbors. on the north
So
side.
it is sheet C 6.0. It's the 15th page of the plan, if you're in the PDF.
Okay.
It's page
and-
37 in the full packet.
Oh, yeah, that's probably a more useful. Thanks, Sam.
Yeah.
And so one of them is on the building. So the building is kind of like a reverse L shape,
Yep.
and it's at the tip of the L in the middle that sticks out toward the parking lot.
Okay.
And then the other one is toward the back of the parking lot where the sidewalk ends there at the edge of the building. So it's basically where the building ends, it's like 2 or 3 feet back from that.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. And, oh, sorry, do you mind if I keep going? I just had one other question.
Go ahead.
It might have been an earlier version that was now rectified, but I just want to double check that there was the maneuvering lane issue. I think it was 20 feet, now it's 24.
They fixed that,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, they fixed that.
Thanks for clarifying that.
Yep.
On the wall, again, from AEW, the engineering, their item number 9 says a 6-foot screen wall is proposed along the north property line. However, no detail of the wall is provided. Applicant shall include a detail of the 6-foot high screen wall. And is that just something that's been left off the prints here?
It was added to the updated prints when the height of the wall changed.
This was dated March 8th, so I don't know.
Yeah, I think that is, they're referring to the original plans. And they put that on, I want to say it was C 3.0. Yeah, it's on 3.0 at the bottom, kind of down on the left side.
3.0, you said?
C 3.0, yeah, C 3.0, which is, you're looking at a bigger PDF than I am. It's page 6 of the plan, and if I'm doing my math correctly, it was page 37 of the other one. So it's like 12 pages before that or something like that.
You found it? All right.
So you can see the dumpster enclosure, and it's kind of at the bottom there.
What kind of? This is a Google. Google Chrome. No, I don't think it is. It's cheap, but.
To Commissioner Solomon's question about this turnaround or something, so
PDFs and
how was it resolved? Like, there's these two spots in the front of the property. Are those still there, or are they not there?
So what they are asking, and I'll let them elaborate on what they are requesting here, but what they're asking is that they be allowed to defer 2 spaces with the idea that if at some point in the future they would be constructed. But they are also pursuing a shared parking agreement with the neighboring church that would make up for the loss of those 2 spaces to get them to their parking requirement.
They need more than 2 though, don't they?
They're 2 shy of the requirement at the moment.
Too shy?
They've got 21 spaces on the site,
And they
and
need
23 are required.
Okay. And is that where the dumps or the garbage truck on their diagram, it showed like the garbage truck was going to pull in? Are those the 2 deferred spots?
That's like an apron for turning. Yeah, it's not
Oh,
actually
that's not the
spaces.
same place that would be the 2
No,
deferred?
those are
Okay.
across from that apron, across the
Across.
neighboring lane. Yeah.
Oh,
So you
okay.
see there's kind of like a little bubble on the plan there.
Okay, and this might be more of a question for them, but the fence seems to go right up and abut that house on the westmost part of that property where like that, just where the easement's kind of at there along that place of worship. I don't know,
Which like, can you give me a property line, like north, south, east, west?
the west,
West, okay.
yeah.
So on the west property line.
I'm sorry, the east, I'm really bad at
Okay,
this.
east,
The
okay.
east property line.
East property line.
The east property
on the
line,
church,
like right.
the church side.
Like right along the parking lot there, it seems like the fence just is like touching the house almost from when I drove by it.
Oh, like in the back of the lot, back where the driveway ends?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so the driveway is actually on the property of the house there, where
Right.
it goes around the building, and that fence in the back it's either on the property line or it's or it's a little over it, one or the other.
Well, that thing's coming down with construction, right? I mean, you can't take down that house without that fence.
Yeah,
So
I
I'm
would
assuming,
assume.
do we know whose fence that is? Who's claiming ownership of the fence? And if it's going to be something that is a point of contention with that house of worship? I assumed you've mailed them as well as residents. We've mailed everyone to kind of let them.
No, this is a permitted use. It's not a special land use, so it
Okay.
doesn't have a mailing associated with it. If they go for variances, there will be a mailing for that.
Okay. So do we know whose fence that is, or if anybody's spoke with them about that fence?
No, I would have to
Okay.
defer to the
Okay.
applicant.
Any further questions for Joe?
Just, this was on our agenda a couple weeks ago, and it was pulled the day of, I think, or very shortly thereafter.
Yeah, for revisions, yeah.
What was the principal revisions between then and now?
So originally it was closer to the northern property line. They got rid of a few rooms. They widened the maneuvering lane, did a couple other things. They added a couple parking spaces. So there were several revisions to the plan in that time span, but those are the big ones.
Okay.
Any further questions for Joe? And if not, I would ask the applicant if he would like to address some of the issues.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Aiden Calabat with Calabat Engineering. Business address for the record is 31333 Southfield Road, Suite 250 in Beverly Hills, Michigan. I appreciate your time this evening in consideration for this proposed project. Wanted to run through a couple of the questions that you guys have been bringing up towards Joe and bring some clarification from our perspective. So with respect to the dumpster enclosure and the screen wall, Just to provide some clarity, the ordinance requirement is a 4-foot 6-inch high screen wall along that north property edge. We're meeting and complying with that requirement. The dumpster enclosure is intended to be constructed in line with that screen wall. So that screen wall will go from 4'6", jump up to 6 feet where the dumpster enclosure is, jump back down to 4'6", and continue on in that area. So we meet the minimum requirements there. To answer Commissioner Harris, I believe the name tags are correct. Sometimes we'll still get city council's names up on there when planning commission is sitting, so forgive me. But to address your comment about main changes from when we had pulled it, when we had originally done this, there was the parking calculation was calculated differently than what the ordinance currently says. It was our understanding there was some consideration for revisions to the parking calculations, which are more in line with a lot of other communities that we see. So your 1-bedroom and efficiency units would be 1 space per unit, and your 2 bedrooms would be 1.5 spaces per unit. When we had originally had it calculated as such, there was a requirement for 19 parking spaces. Upon review and with the ordinance the way it's currently written, the requirement is for 23. So we were shy 4 parking spaces at that point. What we did to resolve those is we added, essentially we added spaces at the back of our current parking lot, and we pushed that dumpster enclosure back into that green belt, that 10-foot green belt. We originally had a continuous green belt across there, but unfortunately we had to push that back to add 2 more parking spaces there. The other 2 spaces we have currently proposed in the front yard. They're kind of across from that turnaround area. So right now we're proposing them as being deferred because we think that, to Commissioner Harris' point earlier about stormwater, we think that the ordinance current requirements for parking are a little bit strenuous, which overburden properties with too much impervious area. One of the factors that every community now is facing, as they're going through their ordinances, and not just residential multifamily, but across all disciplines and uses, is are we requiring too much parking for actual uses that are out there? And there have been a lot of traffic studies and parking studies that support the conclusion in most cases that, yeah, we are over-requiring parking in a lot of instances for a lot of uses, which is creating unnecessary impervious areas, which is adding to our stormwater discharges for developed sites. And you can see this effect snowballing. Communities such as yourself that are on combined sewer still, they feel a lot harder those implications. The proposed project does include a 100-year storm detention system underground at a controlled release rate. So we would be capturing all of our runoff. Again, to some of your earlier questions, Commissioner Hare, about stormwater runoff and capturing it. I personally graded the site. All of the stormwater will be captured on it. There's a couple of areas on the east side where the existing driveway between us and the church is just, the grades are a little bit lower. So some of that green belt stormwater is going to sheet off into that, which will then continue to go either forward or backwards as their site is graded. But for the most part, all of our areas are captured and graded. We've got swales in the front and back of our landscaped areas where we've got, typically we'll put an under drain, a little French drain, which will connect those green spaces to our catch basins. We collect all that stormwater. It is contained all within site. You don't have a lot of runoff going off of our site. We've even thoughtfully considered our gutter downspouts as well, too. So typically those will tie those into the underground storm system so that they're not taking all your roof drainage and just shedding it right onto your parking lot and onto your site. So we tie those as well to the catch basins. So everything is captured and collected. As far as the nature of what we're proposing, which I think sometimes when residents see something going up in their backyard, it can be a little bit daunting and scaring sometimes. Just like to remind you guys, we're proposing a 2-story building with a roof, residential style roof. It's within the height requirements for the zoning district, meets the 30-foot minimum height requirements, which is pretty similar with your residential homes as well. I don't know exactly what the R1 height requirements are, but they should be right around 30 feet as well. Because your regular single-family 2-story home is going to be about there, 28 to 30 feet in height to the midpoint of your roof. So from a characteristic perspective, you're not looking at anything much larger than what's currently there. And that entire frontage along 14 Mile is zoned RM, so this is a by right use. This is what the city has designated as the desired use for that corridor. The single-family residential homes that are currently there on 14 Mile, they've got a hardship to them. It's part of the reason why these properties are zoned RM. For multifamily is a lot more tolerant to the traffic conditions of 14 Mile Road than a single-family residence is. With a single-family residence, you have a lot more concerns about safety and traffic on a main frontage road like 14 Mile, which is one of the reasons why your zoning map has it zoned as RM, because more desirable is to soften the impact of 14 Mile Road as you move up north into the neighborhoods. So you start with these multifamily or commercial uses. And along 14 Mile, you guys have done a beautiful job of mixed uses, commercial and residential. So that's the character and the goal for the city moving forward, as defined by the zoning ordinance. The proposed project meets just about every ordinance and is permitted by right. So to Mr. Tangeri's earlier point about public comment not being an issue and letters not being sent out, it's almost to the fact that that's because this is part of the developer's land use rights, is to develop the property in a manner that's suiting with the zoning ordinance and the zoning map, which they have proposed here. So we've got two ultimate things that we want to address with this site. The main one is parking. The parking requirements as written are putting a little bit of undue stress, in my opinion, on the proposed development. That's why we've deferred 2 of these parking spaces. That's why we're working on a shared parking agreement with the neighbor. That's why we've got them penciled in at the front. We're showing that we can construct these 2 spaces. We can build them there. We've got our plans. We've engineered them, set the curb grades. I know they can cut those 2 curbs. They can put in that radius, and they can build those 2 parking spaces at any point in time. And what we've done in other communities, especially when parking is something that the community is looking at as part of their ordinance, is say, okay, well, we will give you the opportunity to look at it. Use this project as a pilot, as a test pilot. See how the parking is on this project. If you feel that the parking as is currently defined in the ordinance is adequate, you'll see it on this property. And you can then enforce it and say, no, you need to build those 2 spaces as per requirement, because we're seeing the function of this property and you really do need those 2 spaces. Or you might find, given time, that we're seeing a lot of empty spaces in that parking lot, especially at nighttime. That's when you're really going to want to judge it, when everyone's come home from work in the evening times, and see how that parking lot is holding up. So I think we've been thoughtful in our approach as to how we try to address some of the sensitive issues here. With respect, there's 2 variance requests that we have as part of this project. The first one is for density. The density request is a bit of a calculated one. It's 24,898 square feet are available, which gives you essentially 24.89 units or rooms per the ordinance calculation. We propose 25. I personally would think that rounding would come in, and anything over, the half would be rounded up. But apparently if you don't meet the full 1,000, then you're seeking that variance. So that variance is basically a waiver of 112 square feet of lot area to permit that 25th room. The second variance request is on the east side yard calculated setback. The calculated setback is one that takes into account the length of the building and the height of the building. It's intended in the ordinance for separation between RM zone properties as well. This isn't calculated on the rear or on the front. It's calculated on the side yards between 2 RM uses. Adjacent to the east side, we don't have an RM use. We've got a church. That's not likely to change. One of the things that we have, we're about 7 feet shy of the calculated setback, but we meet the minimum required setback. If you look at the site plan, you can see that on the west side, there's about 7 feet of landscaping. I could easily meet this requirement and not require this variance by shoving that parking right up against the property line on the west side, which is permitted. That green belt there is not required. That would put that parking right up against that property line give us the required east side yard calculated setback. I don't think that's the right move for this property. I think that's going to put a little bit too much stress on that neighboring property. And then what you're going to end up with is abutting RM, if somebody else continues developing RM down 14 Mile, and you got parking lot right up against parking lot. Nobody's got landscaping. So we think that landscaping is better split between the east and west sides than shove it all on the east side where it's not, gaining as much value there. So those are the two considerations we have for the variance requests. Ultimately, I think that one of and I share Commissioner Redmond's earlier sentiment about the placement of the dumpster enclosures. We typically don't like to put them all the way at the back of the properties. Unfortunately, the way most ordinances are written, they don't give you much opportunity for placement. They're not permitted in the front yards. They're not usually permitted in the side yards, so the rear yard is about the only place you have to put it. And again, I think that is further exacerbated by the current parking requirements as the ordinance is written. Just for note, the way we previously had it calculated was that it would require 19 spaces, which is 4 less than what is currently required, 2 less than what we are currently providing. I think that's a lot more accurate for what this type of use would require. But again, we have to meet with the way the ordinances are written now. Part of the reason why we put the deferment in there is to show some flexibility and leniency from the developer to work with the city and work with the Planning Commission and City Council as it evaluates the parking requirements within the city. And really, we're here to answer any other questions. Tony, would you like to add anything further?
If I might comment before you say, the 2 variances you're seeking, you're going to be seeking those through the Zoning Board of Appeals, not through us.
Correct.
And they will have to affect that. I'm still slightly confused on what you're calling this deferred parking. You're short 2 parking spaces, and you're saying you want it deferred, that you say for 2 years from now, then you might put them in then, if we ask it for it then, you're asking for...
Sure, yes. What the way that goes is we show an area where those can be constructed.
Where they could go.
We design them.
But you're not putting them in.
But we're not constructing them. We'll leave them deferred. There will be a review period, usually 2 years. It allows, usually 2 years after completion of construction, allows for the units to fill up, occupancy to go, and for traffic studies to be assessed, that information to be provided back to the city for review and evaluation. And then if the city finds at that time that those spaces are required and they do want to enforce that requirement, then the developer is required to put them in, to install them.
Okay, maybe Nick or Joe could answer that to me. Why is that in front of us on planning? Why wouldn't that be on the list of ZBA variances? I mean, we're making a decision here that we're going to...
Well, if they're planning on a shared parking agreement for their release valve, then the Planning Commission is the one that has the approval authority over that. If they weren't seeking that, then that would be going to the ZBA for that too.
But that's not even reality right now.
It doesn't seem like it's in our ballpark, to me, it doesn't.
I can speak to that a little bit further. So yeah, the shared parking agreement is something that we are pursuing. We recently had talks with the church out of respect for him. Last week was Holy Week, so they did not want to disturb the pastor too much. But he was very open to it. I'd like to remind the Planning Commission that the church currently has an encroachment on this property. So an easement needs to be granted by this property owner to the church to allow that encroachment to continue. This developer is reaching out to his neighbors saying, hey, you're encroaching onto my property and you don't have the right to do so yet. I'm going to give you the right to do so. All I'm asking for is 2 spaces, which we actually can, through further deliberation and communication with the pastor, we also determined another viable spot. We can add those 2 spaces at the back of the building and the rear of the building on the east side that would be accessed from that drive. That drive would then be under a shared access agreement between the 2 properties. Again, the neighboring property being the encroaching party, so they're, far more.
And how long has that been encroaching?
To be honest with you, I don't know. Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know.
we're not legal here, so
Right,
I
and-
don't think you can go there.
Yeah, I mean, and to scratch that surface and scratch that edge, I mean, the process of adverse possession is a long, drawn-out, complicated battle that involves a lot of money on legal fees and attorneys. Most of the time, those cases and those instances are best resolved by the two parties coming together and agreeing mutually on it to create an easement and recording it. Which is something that's going to be done here. So the 2 parking spaces that we're requesting deferred can actually be constructed back there, and an easement as part of that shared access easement, we can grant those parking
I'm
spaces.
sorry, can I, maybe that's something, I feel like I can't take your word on that. We'll address that once you have the agreement, or put that as something that's contingent
It
upon.
seems premature to assume that it's in the
Yeah.
bag. I mean,
Yeah, so, I mean, unless we have an
Well,
agreement.
Let me clarify something. The way we would design it is the existing drive approach that's there that is encroaching on our property would then provide access to 2 parking spaces on our property at the back rear part of the property on the east side. So we would not actually need the neighbor's permission to do that. We can construct it as is without a shared access.
But that's not on your plan right now.
It's not on your plan,
Correct.
and it's also not, you can't fit 2 spaces there. You just take 2 spaces from them
No.
without,
No. I would, yeah, actually, I think we put together a graphic for it. Let me see if this works here. Nick, can you flip through a couple pages? One more, I believe. One more? Yep. You see the area highlighted there in yellow?
What page is this in the packet?
It's not in the packet.
Oh.
This is a presentation we put together. This is after communication with the priest and with the neighbor next door. And he said, sure, we could, this, again, we would be constructing this on our property. Those 2 spaces there in the yellow. And you'd be utilizing that
so
access.
you're using the drive that is their encroachment onto your property to access those 2
Those 2
spots.
spaces. And in return,
Which would
we-
put you would you still fall within the 30%?
Yes,
You would?
yeah.
Okay.
Yes, because that's building coverage, not impervious coverage.
Why is the reason that you're not putting them there and you're asking for a deferment?
Well, we could add those, I mean, if the planning commission wanted, we could add those in there now and pull the deferment off the table.
I wasn't sure why that's in front of us. That's,
I have
yeah.
a solution to that.
seems a bit
You know,
confusing.
first of all, thank you for the privilege of being here. It's much appreciated. We love your city. And I'll just kind of briefly address the parking and kind of the consideration, why we do it. We take a lot of pride in the aesthetic aspect of what we're doing, and we're also sensitive to our neighbors, because let's face it, we're here, they were there first, so you got to think about that, right, if you're in their shoes. So I'm going to make a couple of suggestions. In reference to the parking, we can meet it. I think it's funny, and in the event we had to do it, I would not recommend pavement, even though it's more expensive to us. I'd put those little things in, the little, the grass papers where the water permeates through. And with this new 100-year floodplain, which I think we all need to be very sensitive to, because as these cities grow, we need to be responsible for our own water. And I have a solution potentially for the property to the north, which I'll address in a second, because our water is contained under the parking lot, and then it flows out at an agricultural rate. They didn't have that years ago. That's why we have all this flooding. So actually, the properties that are designed today are much more thoughtful, and from an engineering perspective, they're very, very good. Probably better than what would be there as it is, because a lot of the properties today go on to their neighbors and what have you, and it creates a problem. So I have a suggestion, just briefly listening to the neighbors, and I'm sure they'll come up, and we want them to. I would kind of suggest that this planning commission would consider it, maybe putting in a fence, a 6-foot fence, not a 4'6", but a nice attractive, they have those very attractive ones that are plastic, and then maybe we'd plant some arborvitae in front of them, okay? Which, as we know, grow if you get the emerald, the giants, they grow 25, 30 feet. Keep in mind, these properties are legacy properties for us, so we don't flip them, we keep them, and we keep our things up nice. We generally overplant, okay? And we kind of like the idea of having, on the west side, a little landscape area, because I think it looks nice. You know, I think we should encourage that kind of thing, because I'm with you, Commissioner, reference to trees absorb water, which is good. They create oxygen, which is good, right? So that was the logic behind it. So even though it costs more money, we want to do it. I don't know that I love those concrete walls personally, because I think they deteriorate over time. And then there's really not a good way to monitor that. So if you had a fence, it leaves a little bit on the bottom. The neighbor's water can flow through. We're happy to accept it, because you can't change their grade, right? And then if you have the trees, that alleviates the potential issue of any privacy, because they should have that. You know, it's just a nice thing to do. We don't want to disrupt our relationship with the neighbor, because obviously their encroachment is something we have to be cognizant of. In the event there's a fire, you gotta get out, you know, and we got to be aware of that. So we're happy to accommodate them, and we're in the process of a discussion with them. So in conclusion, I think we can eliminate the request that we're doing. Mostly it's for the benefit of the project. We had the privilege of doing another project in your city. I hope you like it, and we get complimented a lot. We did overplan it landscape-wise, and that's why we're suggesting putting those trees on the west side as opposed to nothing. Sounds. I think you have a question for me.
I always have questions.
That's okay. Fire away.
When looking at your elevations of the actual building, when it says right elevation, left elevation, now would the front of the building be facing 14 Mile, or is the front of the building facing the west side of the lot where the residential
Where
home
you're
is?
coming in to the west. You mean where you're actually entering?
No, so like these elevations I have, trying to get a perspective of the neighbors, what will they see?
Okay, so that's a good question. To the north?
So
it's-
you would be, yes, is this, yeah, what side of the building is it, if I'm looking at my,
You mean to the neighbor's side?
If you're looking at the ones on your screen.
yeah, there's right, left, and
Right.
rear and front, so I don't know which way those are facing.
Front would be facing 14 Mile.
Front is 14?
Rear is going to be facing the residence back there.
Okay.
And then left and right are going to be your east and west.
And we don't have any balconies, right?
What's
Right
that?
to the north, there's no balcony. So if you pay attention to the way it's designed, there's no, it's kind of a brick wall with windows, there's no balconies going to the north, so it gives privacy. We design it that way purposely. Okay, and to the 14 Mile part, that's where we have them, right?
Yes.
So it's less attractive for our clients, you know, however, that meaning the balcony where the theoretical activity would occur, but it's just better for everybody. It's just good design. That's how you should do it.
Yeah, so how tall, because it looks like there's a window, that would be a studio, right, that's up, that would be a residential studio that would be facing the north then?
Yes, there would be the side of the studio units,
So
first and
that's-
second floor.
It's essentially like 25 feet high, that window, correct?
Probably not. It's, what is it? It's 10 and
20.
9 and, you're probably about,
A little
I
bit
mean,
less
to the
than that.
top of the window? Okay, so the first floor is 9 feet, plus you got a foot for joist, right?
Yeah.
So that's 10. So it's like 18 feet to the very top of the window.
Okay, 18
So
feet.
from a visual perspective, you probably, you know, your eyes would be probably like 15 feet,
Okay.
you know. And we really don't have any, because there was a lot of discussion on the previous project we had from the neighbors, because they had short lots, very short. We haven't had one call, have we? Yeah. No one's ever complained. We do meet neighbors. We do go see them during construction, because we don't want them calling Brian or anybody else. So we make, you know, our career has been pretty much in very well-built communities, you know, that are mature, Birmingham and Grosse Pointe and all that. So I understand neighbors' concerns, and that's why I'm offering to put a string of arborvitae along the back. And in reference to the trash thing, we have footings. We do a block wall. Rodents and what have you can't get through that wall, right, because it's all concrete. And the containers that they have are self-contained, and they really can't jump up. And we're vigilant about keeping them clean, because it's bad business to have anything, you know, in there while people go there. And we have maintenance crews that take care of that kind of thing. We've not had any difficulty with that.
You have other 14-unit,
On Main and Roth?
and they have one 4-yard dumpster?
Well, Main and Roth isn't built yet.
No, we don't
But are
have,
you talking about Rochester?
no, they're more like 8-yard.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, we don't
should be an
have,
8-yarder.
yeah, we don't have any 4-yard.
I
And
mean, even
when
8
they,
seems really small for all those people.
we have it picked up more frequently. Yeah, there's a way to address that. But that's a good point, and particularly with all those boxes and stuff they have today, you got to pay a little more to keep it clean. But that's just good business, you know, to keep your clients serviced.
The site plan has a 4-yard in there now, and it could
No,
be
we're not,
different.
we're not
but
doing that.
it seems really small, and I
Gotta
actually
have an
think
8.
you kind of need to have 2, just as a backup, so that when one gets full, you can have it pulled out.
Can you fill it?
You can. I mean, you've got a 24-foot wide drive aisle, so you could put two side by side. And the 4, 6, and 8-yarders are usually all the same footprint. They just change in height. So you can still fit them in the same refuse enclosure. But you can, I think our double wide refuse enclosures are like 18 feet wide. So you could put a double wide one in there. It's
We
just
would do that.
A larger
Yeah.
one.
Seems like a predictable problem.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
You can.
I can't stand seeing trash all over. It makes me crazy.
Yeah.
The only other comment I wanted to make, since parking was such a thing for you, Clawson does not currently allow parking on streets overnight. We kind of went over potentially changing our parking, but at this time, we didn't go into further discussion. So whereas you might see other communities that are willing to throw all the cars on the streets overnight and forever, this is how we're addressing it with our conversation. So like the parking, we're not ready to go there just yet, we've decided. But, so the 2 spaces may or may not be an issue. That's something I personally would rather address if and when you have some type of agreement with how you're going to work things out with your neighbor. That's just me personally. I don't know if you've spoke with the church yet about the fence, and obviously it's encroaching on your property, but I'm not an attorney, but taking it down, I don't know. I would think that's something you're going to discuss with them as well, but having more solid plans with that and how that's going to be handled would be my opinion.
I mean, I think the 14-unit elephant in the room here is that's a lot of units in a small space, you know? And it didn't have to be that way. It could have been a 10-unit place or honest to God. I'm trying to think how a family with kids could make it work with other neighbors in that 14-unit complex doing the same thing. It's a lot of units. And I think the first revision had even more units, right?
Okay.
We had more bedrooms.
So the way the ordinance, your ordinance is well-written. I obviously, from my little perspective, I think they sometimes need modification. It's written the way that it's written, and we respect that. You know, we theoretically are allowed 24.898 rooms. When you read through it, I'm sure in the future you'll address how that works, but typically speaking, the folks that currently that are in these places and rentals used to be distasteful to communities, although it's a way of life now. And what we're experiencing in all the units that we are involved with, which are in Royal Oak, Clawson, a little bit, we're finding they're mostly really young people who ultimately move into the communities, into housing. So we have not had that issue. And I did take the privilege of doing a parking study for you, and I shared it with Joe, and I told him he's welcome to share it with you. And it appears through the parking requirements in the state that 18 will do. I'm not suggesting that's good for you, okay? I'm just telling you that people are, they seem to be not have as many cars, and I noticed that at our place with the Elliott, it's not overparked. You know, there's always vacant spots. That's something you have to address as a commission. You
The
know, I'm just
consequence of the parking policy in our ordinance right now is we kind of prevent so much crowding, you know?
Yeah.
In
I
an
hear you.
indirect way. And like, if everybody who was sleeping in the complex now had a car and was parked there, there would not be one space for a visitor, for example, for a friend to come and stay. And so I don't know where those people are going to go. It sounds like there might be a case where they park at the church or the place of worship, but and it's sort of undefined at the moment. But there's like no real plan to have any accommodation for an unforeseen circumstance like a visitor, which really isn't that unforeseeable. It's actually quite foreseeable. So, you know, if we get this right in the beginning, there won't be so many problems for our neighbors. And if we don't get it right in the beginning, it'll be a lot of problems that we're not going to be in very much leverage to address at that point. It sort of is what it is. So it's important that we get it right from the beginning, I think. So I guess I would just ask again, you know, some of these don't even have bedrooms, right? Some of the units I see, we have a phrase called an efficiency, and then we have a phrase called a one-bedroom. But the units I see in the plan are actually efficiencies. They don't have a perimeter to the kitchen and so forth. So
Correct.
sort of, maybe it's just nomenclature, but my vision for Clausen, this is not necessarily an ordinance thing, and this may not be shared with all the commissioners, but it doesn't have to be. But, you know, we're trying to grow Clausen, not just in terms of its economic strengths, but it's as a family-based community, its families have to get stronger too. And you're right, there are a lot of communities where there's no kids, and there's, you know, either single people who don't want kids, or there's, you know, aging people who don't have kids anymore, and that's the whole community base. But I would argue that that is not the growth goal for Clausen, is to have as many families and strength in our families as possible. So, you know, when we have this style of housing, you know, I don't think it would happen in downtown Birmingham. I don't think it would happen in Beverly Hills. You know, it would be a different layout for that particular community. You know, it would have bigger accommodations. So it can be done. Clearly, it can be done. And you've maximized, like, you're the property owner, right? Mm-hmm. And you're the engineer.
Correct.
So he's worth what you're paying, because he's doing a very good job. He's taking every inch in our ordinance that's possible, and he's maximizing it. He's doing a great job at it, right? But I feel like the real vision, or the original cadence for that particular property line, was a single-family residence home. And we didn't even worry about needing the 6 or 8 or 10 feet fences, because the house was 60 feet away from the fence. Maybe the garage was closer, but the house wasn't, the eyes weren't. We didn't have all these tall lights and these things like this. So, you know, it is a transformation of what the current plan, the site is, for sure. And you own the property, and we're grateful that you're considering investing in it, because some people wouldn't, you know. And we want to improve the aesthetics of the town. I just wish personally that the goal, or the aspiration, the ambition of that improvement project wasn't quite such a small one. You know, was maybe aimed at a little bit bigger rooms for people, and possibly, you know, conducive to families. But thank you for everything you've said.
Well, I appreciate that, and I think everything you've said makes a lot of sense. And if you know, this particular project, we designed it very similarly to the other one. And I get your point, but you could have less units and they just be bigger. So as far as the footprint, it'd be the same. However, our objective from a business perspective is to get people to move in, like the community, and I think everybody's really enjoys what's been done, particularly in your downtown area. And our objective is to serve that need for the people that are going to move in, start their little career lives here, and then they move into housing. And, and they have, and it's a compliment actually, and it's become a way of life. And if you pay attention to the building, it's all brick, which isn't required. We try to do an upscale product in terms of the longevity of what's here, so it maybe inspires others to do a better job. When Clawson and some of these cities were built, they were predominantly kind of a more economical alternative. You can tell by building products, that's probably what I'm better at. So it is a nice compliment as it's been received by the people that are there. And they're young people predominantly. And I really don't think that based on what I've seen, and I've gone to our other property and looked at it very, very carefully, the parking's not an issue. It really doesn't matter what other communities do, it matters what you do. But they are dropping it significantly. Again, that's up to you, not me. We can accommodate the parking. We don't need a variance. But we're kind of trying.
Expensive green space though, right?
Well, that's it. That's exactly right. And we could be nasty to the neighbor and tear out his, driveway, but that's not nice. They rely on that. However it got built, it got built. So we're trying to be accommodating to everyone. So just to summarize what I'm suggesting, I would recommend if this steam body would consider it, maybe putting a 6-foot attractive, fence that'll outlast any cement wall, and then put an arborvitae, which is those little skinny trees that grow tall. You can't see through them in winter or summer because they do an effective job at blocking it. And I would make that concession based on what the neighbors have expressed. And then I think we kind of meet everything else that we're supposed to. It's, a little bit of a balancing act. And we are sensitive to everything that we have to be, and we'd love the privilege to continue to work here. Does that help explain things?
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Any other commissioners have any questions for the applicant? Sure.
Yeah.
Nick?
Good evening, everyone. There's been some really good commentary on this project. One of the first things I just want to touch on real quick is if everyone could take a quick image of that in their head, and then I just want to show a project that is 2 properties down. Give me one moment, please. So 2 properties to the west, you have 2 other multifamily units that have less green space, have a larger footprint, and I'm going to assume larger amount of units. And if you look at the design and feel of those properties, what do you think fits our community? And that's a rhetorical question. And I think based on what has been presented on the Rochester Road project, Main and Roth, this one, he wants to have a good project that fits the community and fits the aesthetics of it, and also is willing to work with the community and with your requests.
Yeah, I think the key word there is all those assumptions. I don't know how many units are there. I drove past it. The accessibility to the parking spots is superior. You can get to your parking spots very easily. I'm a little concerned about how 2 guys getting home from work at the same time would navigate each other in the 90-degree abutment that is currently there. But I hear what you're saying. The aesthetics and the design, the brickwork, the roofing, the lines, far superior to what you're showing here, for sure. But the devil's in the details, and that's not a new construction. We wouldn't build that today under any circumstances. It's a little bit apples to oranges, but I appreciate what you're saying, that it's not unheard of to have such a structure in Clawson. Just down the road there is one for sure, but I think what is behind it is a little bit different as well. So I'm interested in the details of that comparison. as well as the details that we were talking about earlier, and it sounds like there was a lot of good discussion on that, so I appreciate your comments, Nick.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's exactly what they're trying to do, is meet the ordinance based on what we've changed throughout the years, so we don't have a similar project where we've got a parking lot going right up to residential homes. I think Mr. Randazzo has made it very clear he wants to work with you guys and work with your opinions on how we can make this project work, with the fencing starting as one. So I'd recommend maybe providing a couple other points that you think they can work on so we can move this project forward.
Thanks, Nick.
All right, thank you. And before I move on to asking for a motion, and before we vote, I will take this opportunity to say we're on agenda item number 7A, and I will now open it for public comment. And if anybody from the public here, perhaps they can throw us some more ideas we can.
Okay, so I've got a lot of opinions, and I guess it's not opinions that count so much as the rules. The driveway, I'm confused on where the driveway is, because I had read in earlier plans, it was gonna come off of Custer behind the church.
No.
It is coming off 14 Mile. Okay, because that was a big concern, that the traffic for, okay, then I'm gonna go right into the wall. I mean, it went from 6 feet to 4.5 feet, and now it's going to plastic. That is gonna do absolutely nothing for the sound barriers. That's a big issue, because you're taking a 3 residential property that we're used to and putting like, what, 24 people or rooms or houses or whatever you want to call them in there? Are they condos? Are they apartments? Are they going to be purchased? Are they going to be Airbnb'd? Are they going to be rented out? They are so small, I don't see nobody staying for long term, because they're going to outgrow them very fast. And he was saying how, you know, they'll get them in the community, let them buy a house. Clausen don't have no problem selling their houses. That's, you know, that doesn't even matter. What matters is the size. I think they're being greedy, putting too much residence on that 3-lot property. I don't understand it. Because of the lighting, I mean, can they use focus lighting or dark sky lighting rather than lighting? You know, when it's 18 feet high and you want a 4 feet fence and a 6 feet arborvitae, that's just not going to get it. I mean, I personally planted, when I moved in there 25 years ago, 5 big pine trees, and they help immensely. But they're not going to help all my neighbors who have young kids, swimming pools and all that for noise, privacy. I still, because some of the houses are rentals, I still get garbage over my fence. I'm concerned with all the traffic and the parking. If they're talking about sharing parking with the church or the driveway, the church itself has enough parking issues. They're parked up and down the side streets when they're in session. So, I mean, there's just so many. How long is it gonna take them? There's a house on Bywood and one around the block that's been sitting there forever. So how long are we gonna have to listen to them build this? 3 years, 3 months? Are they gonna take care of the rats and try to collect them as they're building? Because you know when you demo, you've got rats. Yeah, it's the parking, the lighting, yeah. I'm not happy with the lighting. I don't need it in my lights.
And the lighting, I believe that's under ordinances that the buildings are inspected when they're put up, and lighting has to be, you're not going to shine lights in the neighbor's backyard.
So it will be more focused or dark sky lighting?
That's always controlled. That's always looked at closely, and then.
Okay, well, there's a light behind, on the church, actually, that's quite a nuisance.
It shines right into our bedroom window every Friday night.
So we're concerned about that. And the plastic fence, that's just a joke. That is not going to do nothing for sound. We are all proposing, and I know you guys are going to laugh, but we're just going to keep fighting. We want to see a 10 to 12-foot fence up, concrete wall up there. See, I need the Snickers.
We can't go that high.
Okay, so why not? Why can't we go 10 feet?
No, our ordinance is 6 feet max,
Why is there a max? That makes no sense.
because that's the way the ordinances were written, and that's what we abide by.
And now it's 6 feet. I thought 6 feet was a minimum. I didn't know it was a max.
That's the maximum, I believe, in town.
Okay, because I can see a bunch of teenagers, young people moving in there, because they have no green space to hang out in. They're gonna sit on the brick wall that's only 6 feet tall and do their partying and having fun and throwing their trash. the lights and the traffic in and out, fighting for parking spots, I don't know, it sounds like a nightmare. It sounds like way too much for one spot. I don't have a problem with putting something in there, I just think it's a bit much.
I don't think the lighting is going to be a problem for you.
Okay, well, the noise factor will definitely be,
The noise might be a slight factor, but I don't see that being extreme either. I mean, people come home, they go in their apartments, and most of them are quiet. I can't imagine kids sitting on a 6-foot-tall cinder block fence and throwing beer cans around.
seen it a
It's-
million times, I'm not exaggerating it by no means. but-
I see your point, yes.
Yeah, I mean, well, everybody had, not myself, but the rest of these people have swimming pools, and they're concerned about their little kids, and there's just a lot, and again, the rat factor, are they going to be having rat traps out while they're doing this, so they're not running to our yards?
And we've all seen that in town. Anytime there's a construction, and especially sewer lines, that's when the rats really come out.
Right, yeah.
And that, it is what it is. It can be
And the
controlled
green
only so much.
space, definitely are requesting, 25 feet trees. I mean, for the lighting, for the sound, for the water factor. My God, the water factor. We don't need more water in our yards. And I think let's see if I covered everything that was really bothering me. Yeah, do we know if they're going to be rented or sold or weekly, monthly Airbnb? Do we have answers to that?
Yeah, it's, we're complying with the zoning,
Okay,
so there are gonna be rentals. However, the way we build them for future condominiums, because they have separate utilities, gas and electric. So the objective is to have the best of all of it, In reference to, the rodents, we have not had any issues in reference to, we've been building for 47 years. I haven't had anybody complain to me once. I mean, this could be a first time. In reference to the noise aspect of it, I guess if someone were to build a 10-foot wall, like on a freeway, we're not required to, we're required to have a 4.5-foot wall, we'll do that.
you'll build a 10-foot wall?
No, I won't.
That would be
Not
awesome. I would appreciate it.
It'd be kind of weird, to be the only one in the city. But that wouldn't accomplish your objective. Your objective is to have privacy.
Privacy and silence,
We haven't had,
Do you live behind an apartment building?
I've been working at an apartment building for 47 years. So, I mean, I live there. I mean, I'm there every day from 6 a.m. to 7 at night. And it's our job as good neighbors, if there is anyone, and the police's job, if there's a noise complaint, they come, they correct it. But we really don't experience that because of the,
Come hang on my corner where there's a lot of apartment buildings, and you'll see a lot of noise and fights and police.
well, I have a suggestion for you I'd invite you to consider the following. The part that what people have to pay today, which I think is exorbitant, at least for my age. I remember when people used to pay $55. These people are paying anywhere from $1,600 to $1,900. And that in of itself doesn't matter.
You're
However-
right, because then you're gonna get 5 people in one one-bedroom apartment, so they can afford it, I get it.
No, we don't, that's not allowed by law.
Okay, well, okay.
You can't do that.
Well, that would be awesome if it don't happen.
I can just give you my personal experience that, we monitor that kind of thing carefully.
Okay, well, here's some of my thoughts and a couple copies of them. Somebody would consider that fence, I don't know why that has to be the maximum.
It's a little difficult for us to look at this at this point in time,
I'm
so
sorry?
it's a little difficult for us to see it at this point in time. We can't sit
No,
here.
no, I'm just saying if you want them to
Oh,
return back to
okay,
what I
thanks.
just discussed.
Yeah, like
Thank
for,
you.
yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else from public wishing to speak?
Hi, my name is Sean Sitterlit. I am the house directly behind the house that's next to the church. I do want a wall. 6 feet is fine, because I do have a wall right now that is 6 feet. And if that, I would like that not to be touched at all, because it ends at my house, after my house, to the next neighbors. That's my only complaint. Other than that, I would love to see those houses demolished because of what happened there a couple years ago. That was a good buddy of mine that did all that. So, but that's my only complaint. I want my wall to stay.
And your wall is what, a brick wall or?
Brick wall.
Brick wall.
There's nothing wrong with it. It's nice and strong.
And would that wall stay?
Which property are you directly behind that?
Directly behind the
You
brick,
got the church?
behind the brick house there, I believe.
431?
You're not in these ones right here. Here, this one right here.
This is going, this two
That isn't their property.
So we have it.
And that wall actually might even be 8 feet, because I think got a foot and a half of landscape that's up.
No.
When I'm 5'6", it's still taller than me.
So the current proposal is that wall stays in place and then we extend that wall.
Okay.
We're extending from that wall line.
So you actually extend the wall
Yeah, we'd be extending that wall that's behind you, we'd be extending that
right on down the line.
right on down the line to the end of our property.
So no fences, just a wall?
Right now, it's currently proposed as a wall. It's a wall, yeah.
Okay.
And I can talk to Mr. Randazzo and see if he's comfortable to raise it from 4'6" to 6 feet. If that,
That's what I'm saying, because right now,
That's your
I'm
request.
5'6", and when I go back there, it's
yeah,
up there.
6 feet's a reasonable height for a wall, yeah.
But that's my only
We can
complaint.
consider
You're
that.
good?
So, thank you.
Okay.
So are you gonna, I live right behind the church.
Can you come to the microphone, please? For the people at home can't hear otherwise.
I live directly behind the church. And all of our yards slope towards the church. So when they put that brick wall up, they dammed all of our yards up. So all of our yards flood. And there's a drainage for 3 houses back from us that drains up to our sidewalk, floods our sidewalk, and then goes into the street. So is that wall still going to stay there with the church, or are you just gonna extend to that wall?
Okay.
That wall stays. We don't have the right to take that wall out because it's not on our property. The ordinance requires it to be a masonry wall. That's why it's a masonry wall. That's
Okay.
why Mr. Randazzo suggested, instead of a masonry wall, a vinyl fence that would have a gap at the bottom of it to allow drainage to sheet out from underneath it, which would alleviate your
That's
concern.
not gonna help us a bit, because we're right against the
Where you
church.
are, you're by the wall. You're by the wall.
Us, we're
Where-
behind the wall, they're
Where
by the
others
wall.
might be,
We don't have a wall. We start
We
where
need
the
a
wall
wall.
stops.
yeah, so.
And then Mike, he doesn't have a wall.
Yeah.
Our neighbor next to the.
Yeah, but
So
he
her-
does,
her
and his
concern-
yard floods, and the yard behind his
All our
floods.
yards.
Yeah, so what her concern, what she's trying to do is, I have a wall, you guys have individually.
Right.
She has, they have plenty
We all do.
We all do.
And excuse me, could we keep the conversation to the microphone?
Yeah.
Sorry.
So the initial instinct of having a fence that has a space underneath it is to accommodate what they currently have as an issue. We'd be happy to look at your situation, and we might be able to maybe put a drain tile there, to get it to go if you consider what I'm suggesting, not only aesthetically, but I think practically, because if you got a little space, the water can creep over to our property. If you put up a brick wall, it's going to block it.
Well, that's how it was supposed to be set up when our properties were built in '78, and then the church put the wall up and dammed it. There's no entry for the water to go under that fence. It all goes along, it looks like a lake.
So what we could do, if it accommodates, if you are in favor of this, I'm not suggesting you should be, although I'd like it, we would be happy to look at your issue and try to alleviate it. Mind you, we're not required, but just being good neighbors. And what that means in English is there may be an ability to put a ditch with some drain tile, is what they call it, and get it to drain over going, I guess it would be west, is that right?
Ours goes east.
Yeah, but if ours is west, so we'd have to put a ditch and maybe put a drain tile and see if you consider this fence that I'm considering, which the objective is not to create more issues for the neighbors from a water perspective. And if I'm putting the trees up, which we don't have to, I'm doing that for privacy, because I think you're entitled to it. I think it's a good thing.
Years ago, the city let us and Mike and the house next to them, they put a drain in. And the drain, you got a drain too, don't you, Mike?
We do, and we all paid for it.
We all paid for it to come out, but it comes out to our sidewalk. So it floods our sidewalk. We actually had to put a drain, a small drain from the street to the sidewalk to the street.
Does it work?
very little, because when it pours, it's like a lake running down all of our yards. Yeah. And we've all had basement
Yeah,
issues
yeah,
and
we-
Could you
everything.
look at that?
It's not on our site, so.
No, but I mean, if they
We
get
can, yeah.
permission from them to look at it. Maybe we can come up with a solution for them. I'm not committing to it, but I'll look at it. If it's not,
We had a lot of these water problems in town. I've
Yeah.
got some at my house also, water basin, 1923 house, and it is what it is. What they're doing when they're putting their building in, they're retaining their own water
Right, I understand.
and letting it go, so that you're not going to get more water from this building being put in. You're probably going to get the same amount of water you get regardless.
But we do have a catch basin, and we can work with Mike Smith from, is it?
AEW.
Yeah, AEW, to see if, again, we need to have that fence up so that we have space and the water can come. But we have a catch basin, and we might be able to absorb some of that. Because obviously ours is we have the 100-year deal. And it would probably be a great benefit to them to do that.
You're going to have people wanting you to come build behind them just to get their water out of their backyard.
Well, yeah, because all our water comes from their yards. And
Well, we live on a hill.
well, I know, but everything runs from west to east.
So,
And I mean, it actually looks like a lake. It's a river.
So we could,
And then it comes up our grass onto our sidewalk, and then I had to put a drain in, but it's only a small PVC pipe, because the sidewalk was there.
Does it ultimately, after a day or two, does it ultimately dissipate?
Yeah, but there's a big divot in our yard where it comes up. I mean, it shoots out.
And is the water coming up out of the sewer?
No, it's coming
It's
up
all
from the
coming
drain
out
that
from the
we have.
yard. Basically, when it rains, all the surface water isn't going anywhere, it's ponding and puddling, and then.
Well, yeah, like
not
I
getting
said,
out.
we've each got 3 basins, and then it drains to the sidewalk.
You're getting off track, or you're going to be changing your profession from builder to
Yeah.
a plumber.
that's the way it is. So if their grade is where it's at, and we do that fence, the water will migrate over to our catch basin that we're putting in.
All right.
Doesn't bother me.
So adding your building would be an advantage, in no way a disadvantage, as I'm getting
Oh.
more water.
Big time.
I think that's
But I
safe.
mean,
Safe.
the initial instinct, cement wall, 10 feet high, no judgment there. But that would stop everything, and it would create more of an issue. Because currently, it's migrating over, and what we're suggesting is we have our catch, their situation would improve if we did nothing, just would.
Well, I think the assumption there is that we completely understand the science of that water.
Right. Yeah.
And there's zero uncertainty in how much is going to accumulate there and how much runoff from the neighboring properties is going to go into your site. And this is why I'm concerned about it, because we assume, I think, first of all, that the 100-year flood is sufficient. The 100-year flood or rainfall requirement is sufficient. It's demonstrably not sufficient. If it was, we wouldn't have had all these flooding problems in the past. So we have information on our table right now that says you actually need to over-engineer for that. And that's assuming that the lot is a standard lot like all the other single-family housings. So I'm concerned about the effectiveness of the catch basin personally, but we're coming into public comment time. So is there anybody else who?
Yeah, let's,
Yeah.
we can address it at the end.
Yeah.
Hi, my name's Mike Downs. I live at 423 Broadacre. I'm right behind the church. Oscar's house butts up to mine and Sean's next to mine. I'd like to know what this does to our property value. Something like this. And then the other thing is, the driveway is going to come in off of 14 Mile, but there's access behind the church that goes right by Oscar's house. What's going to prevent people day and night just driving through there anytime they want?
I think isn't it landscaped there right now? They can't, no, I mean, the proposed plan has the parking lot ending behind the building, so there's not a way unless they're driving on the lawn, to get to the back of the church, if I'm understanding you right.
Is that right? Okay, then I'm wrong. Okay.
I believe,
But I am concerned
if I'm
about-
understanding what your question was on
Okay,
that.
at every millage Clausen's ever asked for, school, police, you name it. And I like to think that my house is worth a certain value, because I've taken care of it and put money into it and worked on it. So something like this comes along. I mean, I'll ask each one of you, how would you like it if somebody did this in your backyard?
We absolutely take that into consideration, I think.
You know, because
Yeah.
he can paint whatever picture he wants about, oh, we got all this parking and 1.5 spaces per 2 bedrooms. You have no idea how many people, how many cars there's going to be. You know, you don't know who you're renting to and who you're selling to. And maybe it starts out fine, but now the renter moves and other people move in and they all have cars. You don't know, you know, so thank you.
Thank
Not
you.
to come to defense of them, but you do own the Elliott complex, right? I do have a family member who lives in the Elliott complex on Rochester Road. It might be worth taking a drive through. I helped move them in, and I've been over there a few times. I would just say, based on the prices, I mean, it is somebody who can afford that level. I haven't seen like loud neighbors. I think a lot of the issues today are really important. I appreciate you guys bringing them up. But I don't know if there's any way to look at property values in areas where you guys have built previously. Because I understand, I don't know that I would want to be in your position. But I do know that they're nice complexes with, I mean, I'm biased because it's my cousin, but good people have moved in. And it's good for the neighborhood to have younger folks like my cousin move in. And then he was previously in East Lansing, and now he's thinking about moving to a home when he can afford it, now that he has tried out the neighborhood. So it is, I understand your perspective as well, you know. Rochester Road,
Rochester Road.
just north of Fort. Yep.
And is there anyone else from public wishing to comment?
Yes.
Sure.
My name is Oscar Blanchard. I live at 49 North Custer, which is directly behind the church. Now, my problem is when the construction begins. If I'm understanding correctly, the parking lot that is right behind me, behind the church, is going to be used. I don't think you're going to allow them to take the trucks down 14 Mile and do the construction. It's going to come from the church parking lot across. It has to. And my house is right here. With all that dust and construction and big trucks going through, who knows how long, what's that going to do to my property values? What's that going to do to my house, my parking, everything? It's going to be a mess. And it doesn't sound good to me. Along with the water, if they decide to go through there, the drainage is still going to be a mess until they get everything developed. How long is that going to take? You know, it's still going to be bad. I just don't want to see it. I don't think it's right for that area, especially in my position. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any building timelines? Just curious, 'cause I feel like the Elliott property went up pretty quickly, but do you guys have a timeline?
I can help alleviate some of your concern. What we're required to do, we have to put the infrastructure in first, meaning the pipes and like the sewers and storm and stuff. So the water thing will be better, just because it's going somewhere else. In reference to, we're not allowed to drive through other people's property because, you know, they're going to call the police. So what we're required to do is we're required to put mud mats. What that means in English is broken up concrete. So when they come into the project, and our site supervisor's here, and he makes sure before they leave the site, they have to clean off their tires, or we get fined. So if we put any dirt on 14 Mile Road, we get a ticket. So we have people that sweep, and Mr. Solomon, he can tell you, you know, you can see we keep our properties up. And we didn't have any, I mean, I didn't hear any complaints from our neighbors. Yeah, because we do this professionally. I mean, this isn't like, you know, we've been through this before. You know, because the last thing we want is Brian calling us up, and he will. He's very good at his job. And we avoid all that kind of thing, right? I mean, that's just like what you're supposed to do. Because who needs fines? People complain to you, then we get a complaint. You know, if we have happy neighbors, we have a happy building inspector, and life goes on, right? So I don't think those issues are something you have to worry about. In reference to the value of your homes, if you really look at what's there now, in my personal opinion, it's not so nice, and it's getting less nice every day. So you may or may not, you know, respectfully like the zoning, but it is what it is. You kind of, you know, it hasn't changed. We're allowed sort of to do it, but it's a vast improvement to what's there. Because eventually those houses, I mean, they look almost like they're gonna fall apart. And it's just kind of like progress, you know?
Well, in my opinion, it is what it is, but there are 3 residential versus 24.
Microphone, please.
Sorry. So I was just saying, yeah, there are 3 pretty shabby things there.
Yeah.
And a builder could come in and tear them out and put half as much as what you're proposing.
You have a valid point.
I do.
However, we follow the rules and the laws.
And the rules and the laws say you have to put that much building on that little bit of property?
The size,
Mhm.
okay, if we build homes there, which would not be practical today, we would be allowed to build that much. We could actually.
24 houses?
Well, it wouldn't work like that. We'd actually have, the footprint could be the same. So that doesn't solve it. Like the height, a residential home could be the same thing. It just so happens, this zoning, they call it by right, okay?
I understand all that, but you're just kind of blowing smoke. You could take that same piece of property and put 3 condos, 6 houses, whatever. You're being very greedy, putting 24 residents in there with not enough parking and not enough privacy. Just my opinion.
Your concern is privacy?
Privacy and noise, yeah,
Yeah.
noise.
Well,
And a plastic fence from Home Depot or whatever is not going to take care of that.
Well, I don't know noise, the way you accomplish no noise is probably not to live like in a city, right? Because
No.
you have, okay, so in reference to a wall, the only way that you can stop noise is by thickness of
Right.
a wall,
Greenery,
density.
thickness of a
No,
wall.
actually,
Exactly.
greenery doesn't work.
No, it don't.
Mm-mm.
It sure made a difference when I put up my blue spruce.
Well, you need about 100 feet of them, because there's
I don't know what I have.
STC, they actually have decibel studies. It's kind of strange, because I thought the same way.
She's done talking.
And you actually have to have like 100 feet of trees, which
Hey,
is not
guys.
practical.
Sorry. I think.
Yeah, I think if anybody else in public wants to speak, or.
Right, we could stand here and argue all night,
Yeah, we
sorry.
could-
He says he'll talk to the neighbors too, which I know that he has in the past, so I know he's spoken with neighbors and kind of helped to alleviate those things in the past. I know from other properties, so he's open to discussing with you outside of here too.
Oh, okay, yeah, I just, you know what, I can't get the tall fence I want. I sure don't want a plastic one.
You could always build one on your side.
I already have one there.
Oh, okay.
But I
Okay, we
don't,
had-
for the noise issues, I just, a plastic fence isn't gonna do it.
So Amy here will send everybody a note with our information, and we'll be happy to converse with them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Did you want to?
Just point of clarification, it's 14 units.
14 years.
My name is Mike Dana, 455 Broadacre. I'm the last house that's going to be, well, that picture's gone. Mine's house is going to be where you're putting the dumpster. So now my kids got to play in the backyard, however long away from a dumpster. I really don't want that, and no matter how you say it, those dumpsters are going to have rats. The dumpster, or the apartment that you showed more west, that one has rats. Why do they have rats, but this one's not gonna? And then on the back of my yard, I have tall trees. I don't want my trees touched. And I have a fence. I like to keep the fence and still have the wall. So,
I believe you'll have that. Yes, it will not.
they won't
affect-
tear the fence down?
They won't take your fence down nor your trees.
Yeah, as long as my trees, because they're tall, I don't want, and there's power lines back there. So I just don't want nothing of mine touched, and I'd like the tallest wall we can have, so.
Can I ask just one more question? What is the ordinance? Can they do a plastic wall, or does it have to be block?
Joe can answer that.
The base requirement is block. There are a couple of criteria that allow the planning commission to modify the requirements, but the base requirement is block.
One quick question. Oh, okay. Is the church parking lot and your parking lot going to connect?
No.
Not at all?
No.
Then how are you gonna get 2 spots from the church?
Well, they have a driveway on our property.
Right?
Someone allowed them to put a driveway.
That
So-
goes along the side of the church?
Yeah, on our property, so we could actually drive up that. It'd be kind of funny, that's why I'm against it. So we could do it, but it's weird.
They would be isolated from the rest of the parking lot.
Yeah, it's
There'd be
strange.
2 parking spaces on our property that are kind of towards the end of all that parking along the backside of the church.
Okay.
There would be 2 spaces, once you got onto our property, that would be kind of the dead end of that drive aisle, basically.
Because I know
where
on
you
Friday
turn
nights
down.
and on Sundays, they park everywhere.
Right, so those 2 spaces would technically be on our property, and they would, but they would not be connected with the main parking lot.
So they can't go from
They
Custer
cannot.
through.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else from public before I close it? Okay, seeing no more comments, I will now close public comment.
I just want to, if I may, address a couple of the comments in general. So with respect to the wall and the drainage issues, one of the resolutions that can be made for if a masonry wall stays in, currently the minimum requirement is 4'6". Along the base of that, along their property side of it, there could be a drain tile that's added down underneath the footing. That drain tile would be perforated, would collect any water it would have pea stone on top of it. This would be on the neighbor's side, the north side of that wall, to kind of try and absorb some of that potential flooded water. There could be weep holes that come, a drain tile that connects out and ties into the catch basin. So,
Just a second.
yeah.
Our preference, I think it's, the issue that you have with a wall, because I know it'll be blown back on me, and they're going to be calling me, is that you have a footing. So you can't make the water jump through a footing. You can't. Because so the better way to do it, if it were me, and I don't care, I'll do it either way. I just know you're going to have a whole lot less phone calls if we're willing to accommodate water going through an area that will freely flow. Because it's not going to jump through a cement wall, And I don't want to, just for the record, what I don't want to do is do something that I have a perpetual maintenance issue with. My lender won't allow it, and I don't want to get into a bunch of legal stuff. I'm happy to help, by leaving something a little bit higher, which you may have the discretionary ability to do it, and then also put up the trees. I think it accomplishes everything that could be practically done, and it solves a neighbor issue. Am I making sense?
Right. Would you agree with this statement that putting this building up with all the parking and everything else will not add any water to their property?
No, you're not allowed to.
You're taking care of all your water yourself, and it's going to be gone.
Yeah.
So the water that they get now is going to be the same water that they've had for years.
Well,
You're not going to add to it.
You're not
gonna add to
adding,
their
no,
problem.
that's a good point, and we're willing to, as I suggested, to put up and put up a fence and allow that water to drain through. It's pretty good. It solves an issue, right? I know it's funny to hear a lot of this, and it sounds like we're being aggressive. We follow the laws, and we're really trying to be accommodating. We really are. And we've done it successfully elsewhere. Everybody's happy. And, we make an effort to do that because it's just being neighborly.
Okay, I'm sorry to go back to this, but you're saying if you.
I'm sorry, can I bring it back?
Sorry,
Public
but
comment
I've
is
closed public
closed.
comment
And
at this point in time.
And I'd like to make a note
be
for the
all right if
record
we,
too. My client's willingness to discuss and deliberate and work with the residents is evidenced by quite a break from typical procedure during public comment. In his discourse back and forth with them, you can see he's committed to it, and they really do provide a quality product. that enhances the neighborhood, as Commissioner Solomon pointed out. And the intent of the multifamily district is to attract that younger demographic to the community that starts to build a life for themselves within the community. These are folks that are starting probably premarital, fresh out of college, starting their careers. They're going to be looking for multifamily housing. And ultimately, when they come into a community like this, down the street from a very walkable downtown district that you have less than a mile away along 14 Mile, you're going to find a lot of those residents are going to choose Clawson for permanent residency. And to the point of property values and homes not having issues selling, it's not a matter of will the house sell. Are you selling to new upcoming emergent families? And if you're have residents that you're capturing, you're increasing your tax base from 3 single-family homes to a 14-unit apartment where you're bringing in a younger, new tax base into the community. These are long-term goals that are planned out by the planning department, by the zoning ordinances and the zoning maps. So the use is in character with that. It is a residential use in nature and in character, so there shouldn't be a lot of concern for noise and rowdiness, because these things are against ordinance. There are noise violations. There's noise ordinances. Residents within, whether they reside in an apartment complex or they reside in a single-family home, have to abide by those. And my client has a very good history and track record of maintaining their properties, maintaining good residents, good tenants that are not boisterous or noisy or nuisance to the neighborhood. And they do a great job of maintaining their property so that you don't have some of the issues that you have with some of the older, more dilapidated multifamily developments. So, again, I think, we'd entertain any other questions the commission has. And we're willing to work with you guys in any capacity to help move this project forward, because we feel it is in the best interest of this
So I
area.
have one more question, if that's
Absolutely.
okay. And this might be more Joe or whoever. The encroachment from the church with am I doing this right? That's the same side as the variance you're seeking on the east side of the building. So in that variance, are you including that encroachment or not including that encroachment?
That encroachment is not considered when you're evaluating that variance, because that setback is measured from the property line. It's not measured from any physical hard space or an adjacent
So
building.
you did the property line that someone else is using right now,
It's the actual hard property line.
the hard property, okay.
Yeah.
But it seems like that issue needs to get officially resolved. I mean, it's not a done deal. It's an issue. I think the reality of the situation, you're being accommodating to the church, but that line needs to get fixed.
Yeah, how far onto your property is it again?
It's about 8 to 10 feet onto the property, and the planning commission has the ability to conditionally approve it, and it
We know.
would be required to be resolved prior to permits being issued. Right,
Thanks.
that easement would need to be in place and resolved with those 2 parking spaces accounted for prior to obtaining permits.
Provided we need them, or provided.
Right.
So the answer to that
So-
is when you get a loan, Mr. Hara, you're required to do an alter survey. And if they see asphalt, they're gonna say, we want a reciprocal easement. They're gonna require it because they don't want to hassle down
The
line.
lenders.
So that has to be taken care of, and it will be. And we obviously know that. So it's to their advantage to work with us because they're receiving the benefit and we're burdened as a result of what it is.
Yeah, and the city has a mechanism of if it's not resolved, permits cannot be issued. And the developer also has the challenge of if it's not resolved, his lender would not close on his construction loan and on the development. So
I'm not smirking at what you just said. It's just we have a different issue with temporary occupancy permits.
That's another gate.
No, this would be before
It's nothing to do
permits,
with you.
building permits are even issued, not a certificate of occupancy.
Right,
You wouldn't be able to start construction until it was resolved and recorded.
You're still going to get past the ZBA for your
Correct.
Yeah, so
variances, and you're going to get past the engineering department. So you still got some hurdles to follow through on.
My only question with that was, essentially, when I'm looking at the plan, there's 10 feet between the proposed building and the black pavement that's there right now, as it stands, because you're including 10 of those feet is the asphalt that's
Correct.
there.
Give or take,
That was
yes.
my only question. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. Thank you.
Give or take, yeah.
Okay, if we have no further questions, I would entertain a motion.
Okay. We can't discuss until I do a motion, right? So someone
We
does a
can
motion?
make a motion, we can second, we can still discuss before we vote.
I know, but I don't even know where we're at. So we've got two variants?
There are two suggested motions on the
Oh, yeah, that's right.
paper, if you saw those,
I did.
unless someone else wanted to make a motion. Anyone up here can make a motion, by the way.
I mean, I think the two motions that have been proposed to us are either to approve or reject the site plan. My experience with this is that, and we're discussing now.
Yeah,
Let's go.
just make a
Move to
motion.
discuss. I move to discuss,
There's a third option too, which is postponement for,
which is where I was
Yeah.
headed, so, yeah.
Okay.
Can we second?
I'll second.
You want to make a
Discuss.
motion to postpone?
I want to make a motion to postpone.
Second.
Okay.
I have motion and I have support on that, and the reasoning for that is why you want to look at this further?
So we'll have discussion now, if that's all right. Is it?
Yeah.
Clarify your motion.
My motion is to postpone the approval of the site plan.
Due to.
Is it conditional?
What
Yeah.
you,
My reasoning for that is we've talked at great length about a lot of issues here, and I would say in the strictest of sense, we left a lot of things not quite defined, and there are contingencies, as you just pointed out, to this setback on the east side, which I think only clicked in my head that really it's 7 or 10 feet less than we thought it was because that property line is currently co-occupied, we'll say. So it's obviously in your favor, so this is going to go your way in the end, otherwise the church isn't going to have an exit. So, but that's one issue. A lot of the documentation refers to this project as a condominium. When I hear condominiums, I hear it as something, property for sale, where the owner has a very vested interest in perpetuating the quality of the property. An apartment is not quite the same thing. Just language, but it's universal language to me that condos are owned and apartments are rented. I think that could be clarified, and it matters to me, a lot of these things, because the documentation that went out in the packet has sort of been altered now, and a lot of other public comments, the handouts, the public hasn't had an opportunity really to process those, and I think they should. And I think we should have had it on the agenda for items not on the agenda, or sorry, items on the agenda, so that people, would spend time here as you have, because some people would just look at the packet and say, I'm not allowed to speak about the exact issue on this topic, so why would I bother wasting my time? They've deliberately prevented me from having a voice. Now, that wasn't the intention, and that was an accident, but I think that if that material, along with revisions to the proposal that we've talked about today, because it sounds like you're willing to do the commonsensical things to make this work, but it's very undefined how the fence is going to look, what the renderings, the style of fence. I've seen very nice vinyl fences. I've seen really kind of crappy vinyl fences. I'm going to rehash the refuse issue. Just because we have rats and we have a history of rats doesn't mean we get a pass to just do what we've always done. I don't care about the ordinance. Like we have to do what is reasonable to make this correct. And what is in my mind is for such a small area, for such a dense 14 units with potentially, 28 people living there maybe, I don't know. There's going to be a lot of trash. There's going to be a lot of action there. And I think that whole structure where we're storing the trash needs to be more sealed than is traditionally done. Normally, you just have the dumpster. It's exposed to the environment, and that's it. But there are other forms where it's more enclosed. There's locking doors. The tenants have to come in and open it to prevent dumping, and sometimes it's keyed. Bottom line, keep the rats out, and I think that's something that needs to be spec'd out a little bit more carefully. And then I really want to get back to drainage. What we've discovered and explored here is that due to the elevation changes, it's not just your site that is now losing all that permeable grass that stores water and very naturally holds on to it until the rain goes. We have your basin, which is an upgrade for sure, but that's not a silver bullet either. And it might only be designed for your 100-year flood contingency for your property line, not taking into consideration of the runoff from the other lots that the residents have talked about. So I think we need to give A&W a chance to just double check that very clearly, so that when we have the site plan and it is approved and it does go to ZBA with the existing variances requested, it's a very clean document that encompasses everything that you're trying to do. And one last thing. I haven't heard you say yes or no to this, but you seem very reasonable, and we've already reduced it to basically the number of units in there to be compliant with our parking requirement, which is really the governor on the whole thing, at the expense of permeable area. But in the spirit of family-friendly growth, which is in our master plan, it is our strategy. We don't want to be a retirement community. We want to have perpetuating families. You know, I would ask if there's any room in your plan, or if you have any flexibility in that, to either keep the same number of units but with more bedrooms, or reduce the number of units so that we could have families living there. And it might even be in your advantage for people who are thinking about sub-renting. I don't know.
I think you're getting a little carried away with this. I mean, we have a site plan in front of us. They are falling within the realms of what we are asking them to do. You simply want to postpone and have them come back in 2 weeks with more clarity on where the dumpster is and
its design,
details,
and the fence design, and the water management. Yes, just because those things have been discussed in this conversation as being somewhat fluid.
So just to summarize it, so we're more efficient.
Sure.
We're going to draw in, it's going to be apartments, we'll clarify that. Although I've explained, separate utility issue, which will allow it to be converted someday, which they all are, if you pay attention to them. We're going to put up the fence that I'm suggesting. Iden here will make an analysis to see how much more capacity we have water-wise. I made the suggestion to be accommodating to the neighbors. We'll put up the trees in the back that we're talking about. And I obviously understand it would be subject to the variances being granted. I mean, that's not something you're going to do, but we're confident we can get it. We're not concerned about the setback because we can move it. I don't think it's the right thing to do, but we'll take that up with the ZBA. And that'll be kind of it.
Okay.
Okay, so to answer one quick point, Commissioner Harrow, adding additional bedrooms inside of the existing footprint would not work because the density calculation is calculated based on number of rooms, not based on number of units.
But you pointed that out. Everything wraps around.
Yeah, so right now, we could not. We couldn't convert some of the one-bedroom units to two-bedroom units and offer larger size units because...
Yeah, I think we're talking more like instead of 1410, something like that.
That's not something that...
You're the property owner, you're the developer, you get to choose how much
profit. We're going to
profit.
follow the rules, however, we're willing to concede to satisfy the concerns.
Okay, so on the table, I currently have a motion to postpone with 3 recommendations of what you would like to see them come back with. Do I still have support on that?
Oh,
You supported it originally.
I did support it, yeah. I was wondering if maybe Joe could take the mic for a minute, just because it feels comfortable having Joe there.
It always does, doesn't it?
Yeah. And, Joe, and I can ask Joe a question since we're in discussion, right? Okay.
Of course.
Joe, my issue, I don't really have any. That property is zoned for RM1.
That's correct, yeah.
So legally, we are working as they are within the parameters of what it's zoned for and what that lot allows. The density doesn't bother me. Like you said, they were off by like 0.12%?
They're like 112 feet shy of getting that 25th room.
So does that have to go to ZBA? It does, okay. My only thing is the getting things sorted out with the neighbors, which I know from him being around in the past that he does, work well with neighbors and make good on what he says. Would you advise that that's done through a certain, I don't feel like it's necessary enough to come back for. Is there a way we can do that without having them? This is just my questions. I'm not saying that we're doing that, but is there a way we can do that without having them full on come back?
If there are clarification items on the site plan, the ones that have been discussed, I think, are substantive enough that a return is probably the best course, because
Okay.
I think that there are some things that they're going to design, and they could even go to the zoning board of appeals in the meantime. I mean, it depends on. Of course, that's up to them. If they want to do that, that's fine. If they prefer to wait for a motion here and then go, that's also fine. I think there's some things that they're going to be designing that the planning commission will most likely want to see.
The fence.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So I have a motion to postpone with 3 items attached to it, and you still support that motion?
I support it. I mean, we'd vote on it, right?
Yes.
That's correct.
Vote it up or down, and then I can make my own motion. Yes.
Yes, if it gets voted down.
So I have a motion.
Yep.
So I have a motion and I have support, and the motion is to postpone. May I have roll call, please?
Wait, postpone based on his criteria, correct? Or just postpone?
I think it's just postpone. Those 3 items specifically will be addressed in the
But he
site
gave us
plan.
3 reasons why he wants to do it.
Yeah.
Okay. If I want to follow, sorry, Joe, but if I want to follow your guidance here, I would essentially be voting no on this one and then putting forth a motion to have them come back.
Well, if
given this-
postponement, we'll have them, they'll come back for a postponement, yeah.
But we're not beholden to his postponement criteria? Because he was talking about,
Well, the seconder of the motion has to accept
Why would you second the motion and then vote against it?
I do it all the time so we can talk, Greg. That's what you do. I mean,
Okay.
why wouldn't I? I would like to discuss
So
that
you
motion.
have
So is that motion
You have
beholden?
different criteria in mind, is what you're saying?
Yes,
or-
because the drainage thing, I feel like we've kind of already went through.
Right,
So
yeah.
amend his motion?
You can offer to amend his motion. He has to accept the amendment to the motion.
Honestly, I don't have any problem with just the postponement. I think they understand what we're going for. I think it can come back. I don't think we need to nitpick it necessarily, but I'm fine with whatever you want.
I think
I'm looking for 2 weeks to get it a little more concrete.
Simply a matter of
Postpone to revise and update
Postpone and revise.
is the phrase that you could use, and then they can revise and update based on what they think they've heard tonight. And that can involve discussions with the neighbors, that can involve, if they so choose, going to the zoning board of appeals in the meantime. It can, basically, it leaves it open for them to revise and update the plan.
Be willing to amend that?
Yes,
in that way?
absolutely. So I would, yeah. I will, I think we need to be respectful of the timeline they're probably having in mind, so we can't postpone it for a year. But I think, is 2 weeks sufficient?
Well, I think postpone it to a date uncertain, and then they can come back when they're ready to come back. So, yeah, I don't, 2 weeks is
Postpone
probably
to-
not enough.
Revise and amend,
To be determined.
Right.
undetermined. All right,
Okay,
support.
so now we have a motion.
Support.
And the motion is strictly to postpone, no other additions to it.
Yeah.
And you support the motion to postpone. May I have roll call, please?
Go ahead.
Just one more time for clarity, so everyone knows what they're voting on. The site plan requests are 436 to 456 West 14 Mile be postponed to revise and update the site plan to a date uncertain. Mr. Fitzer?
Yes.
Mr. Hara?
Yes.
Mr. Colburn?
Yes.
Mr. Cusero?
Yes.
Mr. Nushai?
Yes.
Ms. Redmond?
Yes.
Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Solomon?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Hey, what do you know? I voted yes on his motion. Great. Write that down.
Thank you again, Commissioner.
Yeah, this, now it gets worse.
I'll reach out to them and, we'll get it in
No, thank you, everyone, for your participation. We're going to move on to some really boring stuff now.
10 o'clock. We have to extend, right?
How about we postpone this line?
Yeah.
Next meeting.
Make a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to postpone the consideration of draft capital improvement plan on a later date.
Second.
I don't think, I'm not going to second that.
Can I touch on that real quick, if I may? So we are in a time crunch to get this approved, just first of all. This is in accordance with our budget for this next fiscal year, so we're planning on having this in front of the council preliminarily, I believe the first week of May. So with your guys' blessing, I'd love to have the chance to talk to you guys about the current CIP and just see where you guys are, see what you think of the CIP, and we'll just provide the full presentation tonight.
Council's already going through their budget like they did tonight, right?
No, we've not presented a budget to them.
Can we
What
close
was
the
their
doors?
meeting
Is there
tonight?
any, is that,
No.
it's gonna be open? Okay.
We
There's
closed
just a lot
one.
of background noise, hard to pay attention.
Yeah, hold on. I'm gonna go see if they can.
If you can move them, yeah, a little bit, thank you.
Given that there is a motion actually on the floor because it's been made and seconded.
What second?
It was seconded.
Yes, so it was seconded. So there is a motion on the floor, and all this can be discussion on the motion. That's fine. Even if Nick is speaking, that can be discussion on the motion. There's 20 minutes until you have to vote to extend your meeting.
Yeah.
So perhaps the approach to take is allow a little bit of presentation, and then if you get to that point, you can decide whether or not you'd like to vote to extend or
And you wanna
postpone.
give
And
Nick 10
you could
minutes?
then, at that point, vote on that motion.
Yeah.
It's just a suggestion on process.
Why is this in a time crunch right now? What's going on?
At 10 o'clock, we have to vote to extend our time.
the
Not about that.
CIP.
I'm talking about the CIP.
Oh, CIP? It's just, it's on our list of things to do, and we
No, he's
We have to
speaking,
get to
I
it.
think you're asking what Nick
Correct. I'm
was
asking
addressing.
what Nick's trying.
He said
was trying-
that they're
What's the
gonna be,
urgency to get it
it's
to
tied into their
council?
budget, right?
Yeah.
I'll offer to switch.
Since I think we're still in discussion, right?
Yeah.
I think I joined this body right after you guys had worked on that, is that correct?
Right, right.
So you
You
guys have
joined
seen
right
this,
towards the end of
you've
it.
seen this
Yeah.
document in detail already, and can you guys give me your background on like the timeline? Because I'm trying to get the speed on a 60-page document, whatever it was, and I'm just,
Last-
I just wanted to share
It's a
that
wish list.
it's a little frustrating that that we're in this time crunch because they presented the same thing with a time crunch last year.
Like 3 months ago? Yeah.
Right.
that
Right.
timeline I'm just trying to understand, that's
Right,
all.
well-
'Cause I-
It's new now.
We didn't
It's a
have
different
much of a
timeline.
Yes, well,
timeline.
last year was the first time we've ever done that. We were supposed to have been doing that on the planning commission, but we never did. We did it last year for the first time. It should, theoretically, it'll get easier. Giffords and Webster, I think, did the pitch last year, and we're moving it on to the city this year. The city is going to make the presentation. So the format's going to change a bit here.
Correct, and if you guys did take a peek at that memo I provided you guys in the packet, it kind of provided some of the history from last year.
We're in discussion, just so you know.
Yeah.
On a vote. Oh, okay.
I was just providing some
Oh, okay.
context to
I
answer
just
questions.
didn't know if you
I wasn't going to
remembered.
get going.
Okay.
I was just grabbing my stuff.
Okay.
So yeah, there was an explanation of last year, what got us here, and the role of the planning commission and the CIP. So I'll apologize for interrupting the conversation. You guys can please continue.
No, I had a question. You said that we're in a time crunch now?
Well, the CIP is
Why?
associated with the budget.
Okay.
It gets approved in accordance with the budget. And the way that the Planning and Enabling Act is written is within 35 days of the presentation of the CIP to the Planning Commission, it is technically approved at that point, even without a vote of the Planning Commission.
But what happened to the one we just approved?
The CIP
Yeah.
last year?
Yeah, like 3 months ago we approved.
Well, they're
a
fluid
CIP.
documents. They need to be updated every year because certain projects get added, certain projects get completed, and certain projects are no longer necessary. So it updates every year in accordance with the budget.
So, but last year, didn't we just approve it like in December? Maybe
No,
November?
I wasn't on board yet. It was probably before September then.
No.
Oh, really?
It was April. It was end of
was?
April. Yeah.
Oh, my God. Okay, I'm sorry then. I thought it was.
Time flies when you're on the planning
I seriously
commission.
thought we just did this. Okay.
So how much of the document has changed from the last time? Do you guys have like a document that tracks changes and updates? that-
Yeah, so, and again, that was also in the packet as well. There are 9.
I saw that there was the number of.
Yeah, there are,
I
I'm
didn't see
sorry.
them highlighted. And I apologize. This is my background was I'm trying to get the speed on a 90-page document,
No,
over a
of
weekend.
course.
So I know some of the body had already seen this in a different capacity. I'm wondering how much has changed since that point. just for your application?
It was in a totally different format
Okay.
last time, so
So you still.
I didn't compare side by side, just me personally. I didn't compare side by side. Some of the things are familiar. The police thing, there's some things on the police that seemed newer to me. I think that they've gotten different numbers on the sewer. Those are just things that kind of stood out to me, but I didn't, like I say, compare side by side. I don't know if anybody else did.
There are 9 new projects this year. So
Nine?
the bulk of them are returning from last year, with some of them having progress already. I know a number of the road projects have started and have grant funding associated with them as well.
The 9 projects from last year?
There's 9 new projects.
9 new projects.
So there's 77, so 68 of them are returning from our last CIP, yes.
In the last one, you guys had it all down, well, sorry, Giffords did almost a big chart with everything, the way it was just really nice to look at. So everything was in front of us, and then it kind of broke down too.
Yeah, and I don't mean to come across rude. I was going to hopefully touch on all this stuff when I opened up the conversation
Oh,
to
yeah,
avoid
sorry.
some
Yep.
questions.
Yep.
But no, we're going. And so I do have this document prepared that is similar, but I just need to share it onto Zoom for OMA real quick.
So should we vote then, or should we?
I can rescind my motion. That's all.
Huh?
I can rescind my motion.
Will you?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, so just to help clarify, created this document that has all the order, all the projects in order by fiscal year they're supposed to be approved, and I do have a physical copy to each of you. I'm going to just hand out.
I was trying to do that over the weekend. Yep. Thanks, Nick.
Thank you. I was trying to do that with limited time over the weekend, and
Yeah.
it's like, wow.
So I don't expect you guys to look at this in full right now, but that is just for reference as to identify what projects are intended to be in which fiscal year, and also to see how much the total amount is going to be over this CIP of 24 through 29. And again, just to let you know, the CIP is essentially a needs list. That's also a wish list of projects we're hoping to accomplish in the city. And as we plan out our budget, we identify projects that are shared here as projects that we need to accomplish with the approval of the city council. So if we had, I believe it's $8.9 million to do all these projects over the next 5-6 years, these are the projects we would do. And then throughout them, we select ones that we want to have done based on grant funding. If there's need throughout, that's the way we get these done.
Nick, were any projects added to 2029? I don't see any on this list.
2029?
Right.
No.
Okay.
No. And I do want to, Kelly Rowell back there, she's our finance director. She played a very instrumental role in developing the document. And as you guys can tell, it looks a little bit different from last year. And so what we did last year with Giffords Webster is contract them to develop the CIP for the first time for us and go through this process with sharing it to you. And then we are internally building this going forward based on some of the things they started. And they have some more resources. We paid for them last year, and we don't have the complete resources. And we do plan to grow and improve this report document going forward. But all the content is relevant, specific, and projects that all of our staff and departments have identified as things we need to address.
I have a couple clarification questions real quick.
Yeah.
How do we make sense of line items without an amount associated with them?
So those would be
I noticed there's a handful, at least 3 or 4.
Yeah, Kelly, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's because the department head did not have a cost associated with those projects.
Just consider it TBD?
Yes.
Okay, and then I noticed the project prioritization, that 7 factors, 5-point scale.
Yeah.
What's the reasoning behind only some of the projects having that completed? It was a small number that actually had that.
So
Did I miss it in the document?
Yeah, a lot of the newer ones did have that. So when we have newer projects, we're absolutely using that as a metric to grade them. And then, going forward, that's something we want to do again. But, if it was identified last year, it's definitely a need this year, if not a greater need. And to have that number in there going forward is our plan, yes.
So likely it's just due to when those projects were added?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
Are you done, Josh, or no?
No, please go ahead.
Okay. Did you, last year when we did this, and this might be some background info for you guys too, unless we don't do it anymore, they kind of went to each department and had each department create a wish list, and then they did the scoring. Who would be doing the scoring and making these lists? Is it the department, or is it our city manager that's doing that?
Kelly Rao, Finance Director. So each department submitted their request along with a questionnaire that had the weighted scores on there. So is it high priority, low priority? There was 6 or 7 questions, I believe, that were asked, and they chose which ones were pertain to the project. So once those were input into our metric system that we use for the CIP, the system automatically provides the weight for each project.
Okay, and this might not be something that you know for sure, but is that the process that will always be in place? Is that the departments will be the ones speaking for what they need instead of like an overarching admin type?
Yes,
Yeah.
typically it'll be the department through the city manager, and if there's additional discussion, multiple departments may have those discussions.
Okay,
All right?
thanks.
Mhm.
I guess
Can I follow
along the
up on-
lines.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Along the lines of the scoring and the criteria, and I know the departments had submitted it again, but did the scoring or the priorities of these projects change from last year to this year?
So I will tell you that the majority of the projects from last year don't have the scoring. It was just a timing issue. They will be in the next year's CIP, but for all the 23 projects have the scoring assigned to them. So going forward, that's what it'll be. There are some projects that were submitted in '22 that are going to be included in the budget that are higher priority. For instance, the police locker room, that'll be half completed by June, and then the rest will be completed in next year's budget.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Yeah, my question is around priority too. Without seeing that, I'm just wondering how you determine, we don't have $8 million, right? So you have to.
18.
Or 18, I'm sorry. So we have to prioritize, right? So knowing the priority list would be helpful to know what the city has determined is the highest priority to lowest, right?
So there may be a project that is the highest priority. However, funding levels may not be there, where a project may be the lowest priority and we have grant funding to pay for it. Okay. So it may, even though it's a high priority, there may not be the funding available for that.
Okay.
But I think for our purposes, as the planning commission, it's important for us to know what the priority is. Understand that the funding may not be there to support it. There might be separate grants, but at least in the last year's version, I like the formatting of this, to be honest. But it's, at least in last year's format, we were able to get a good understanding of what the priorities were, right? This one, while this great formatting, it's really hard to decipher what the priorities are. Because even last year's projects, the department heads provided their own scoring, and on their, it was all handwritten, right? And I appreciate the fact that we're evolving, but. That on top of, that we're now also in a time crunch again, I don't think we're truly appreciating this process and the intent of the process and the role of the planning commission as part of this process by rushing it for a second year.
So, excuse me, so there will be I will have to go through the handwritten documents and input it into our Munetrix database, which we've been paying for several years as part of the state requirement for transparency. It's on our website. So we use that database, and these are the products that they have. So for the 22 projects that were issued last year, I will be going through all of those and manually putting them back into the system. And then next year, all priorities will be listed going forward.
Okay.
One last question, just for my own clarification again. On the last page of the document, capital project annual costs, trying to track, an average of 4 million a year, but in 2025, it's 1.1 million. Is that typically due to like access to funds? Is there any reason that there would be such a fluctuation between required costs year over year? And that's just trying to make sense of that chart and what's projected
you're
to be
looking
spent.
at the chart?
Yeah, the very last page, it's just a basic line chart for
Yeah,
next
so
5 years.
basically, what we did here is the projects, we actually budgeted for several projects from 22. So that's where the high amount is. For 20, I can't even read my own
think it's
writing.
24,
So for 24, there's several projects budgeted because we expect to receive grant funding.
that was
Where
my question.
25, we don't know where the funding is coming for at this time.
Okay,
All right?
that helps, thank you.
Just a few comments from me. I thank you for the work you're doing. I know this is an arduous task, and I'm not even sure it's satisfying to do, because it seems like every year there's not enough money, and we just regurgitate the same wish list over and over. And if you think it's accomplishing something, and if you think we're accomplishing something for you or helping you accomplish something by stamping our approval on it or not, say so. My sense is it really doesn't mean anything. And if I could say a few things. Execution is what really matters, and looking at all of these pages, I can't tell, are we working towards the plan, or is the plan getting away from us, or is there no plan? So a couple metrics to consider: were our estimates accurate, or did inflation get away from us, and like now we can't execute these plans because the original estimate is just flat out not valid? I imagine that's the case. And are we truly prioritizing things that are strategic? So I see it all throughout this, like there may be opportunity for cost savings if we do the sewer main or the water main while we tear up the road. But I don't understand, is that the plan or is that not the plan? Would we package it that way or not? And so it seems sort of, it's not fixed, it's not specific enough. But, so that's just feedback. I'm not asking
So,
to
yeah,
change anything. I'm
So,
just- yeah.
it would be project by project, based on funding. Is it better to do the water line and the road at the same time? Obviously, it is. Are the costs higher this year? Absolutely. I think it was 40% higher for construction costs. So, yeah, so it is a good document, only because it provides us guidance and direction on where we want to go. And it shows the residents and boards and commissions that these are what we really need.
Yeah.
We may not have the funding for them, but it provides us some type of forecast of where we're going to put our money going forward.
Yeah. I mean, I look at it very strongly from the position of the master plan, and I think we're talking about changing the master plan, but I think we have to speak to this in terms of our existing one. So whatever our existing master plan says, are these items congruent or not with that? And if they are, I think as a general feeling that the planning commission should support it. If they're not, then I think we should maybe exercise a little bit of feedback. This great idea, I would love it too, but not necessarily part of our master plan. Two things that stuck out to me: the EV chargers, I would love to have them if someone else is paying for them, and this camera system that's surveilling our streets. I'm not sure that's in our master plan, so I'm not buying or selling it. I'm just saying.
Due to the bylaws, we do need to have a motion to extend the meeting. I don't mean to interrupt you.
Good call.
10 o'clock, I think I can just take a hand vote here, right? I mean, do we need roll call? Yeah. Will everybody agree, will give us another 5, 10 minutes?
5 minutes.
Okay,
Okay.
good.
5 minutes is always really tough.
Yeah, maybe.
You're always so generous.
I don't know why we always pick the
Like-
lowest.
We'll say 10:30 and try and get done before
I
that.
should have said 3 minutes, right?
So, yeah,
But
that's the
sorry to
flock-
cut you off, Mr. Harris.
Flock camera system and the EV chargers, you know, I couldn't say the city won't go on without those things. And there are other areas, perhaps I would also say, again, camera inspections of the sewers, like, they just keep getting worse. They're, where we've already established that they're in bad shape, like, you can predictably not camera them and know that they're just as bad or worse and just as in much need of repair. So those are just a few areas where I thought we could move some dollars that would make the whole plan a little bit more focused on something that would be congruent with the master plan and hopefully strategic for the dollars that are available. That's it for me.
On your earlier note with, inflation and, you mentioned construction costs are increasing. I know the bids for that Selfridge project were a little bit higher than the original estimate. For a lot of these infrastructure projects that we're looking at today, are these current estimates or estimates based off of last year?
I believe those are all current estimates. There may be one or two that we didn't go back and look at because they're not planning on doing them this year. But the ones that they do want to get accomplished this year, they do have the current estimates in there.
Okay, thank you.
And I do believe what we did with that is took the previous number and used the difference from that Selfridge and Phillips project to give a closer estimate to what it will be in the future.
It would be neat to have another column that just shows another number, 100,000, favorable, unfavorable, to show us.
Favorable to what?
Favorable to the original estimate. So like if it was $1 million to begin with and now it's 1.2 million, you'd put 200 and then a U that says it's 200 grand more that we didn't plan on.
So we can work with our Munectrics database and ask them if they can provide additional reporting for that. It's all available for input. The reporting, it may be a different report of what the original cost was and what the amended cost is, so.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you, yeah. The goal isn't to make your life harder or just make busy work. It's just, I know that when they go into council and they're like, it's this or nothing, just, we're just chipping away at it and there's really no commitment on execution because it's, at the moment, it's like almost impossible to really commit. And I don't know if that's just how it has to be or it may someday be different.
And I know you mentioned execution, and I wouldn't necessarily say this is a execution document. It's to help execute plans. And over the last year, we have made significant strides executing projects on here, getting grant money. I mean, I had another document in the packet. There are 2 or 3 projects currently underway, completed, and then have grant money associated. I mean, that touches the number that we've probably done in the last 4 or 5 years.
I think it's great, and I didn't even think we were planning on some of those grants last year. Like, those seem to just come out recently, which is awesome,
Yeah.
It makes me wonder, is there areas where, you absolutely should prioritize this project because for the moment, it's 1 + 1 = 3 because of grant subsidies or something like that, and, the normal math and comparison doesn't really highlight that,
And
you guys are the experts, you're doing it, so.
Yeah, and Kelly made a good point. That's what happened with Dreon, right? That was planned a little farther out. We had an opportunity to get a grant dollars up to X amount. We saw that was
$5 million.
a project to.
But who's counting?
Well, $4,999,000.
Yeah.
And then
Somebody's
just
counting.
just to touch on the comment with the EV chargers, and I mean, we might have all different ideas on where that lies in priority, but we could have a potential to get a 100% funded grant for that project, and by having it in our CIP, it shows that it's something the city's striving to do. And so is it something maybe we would take our general fund, maybe ARPA fund, to do that? Maybe not, but at least it shows the potential funder of the grant that, hey, this is a priority to the city of Clawson,
Yeah.
and we want to help them achieve
And I
that
think
goal.
it's on the next master plan,
Yeah, I
we've
was
talked
gonna say,
about
it's
it,
part of the
right?
master plan, I think, as well, so
The next
it does
one.
align
Yeah.
with, I think, the goals we talked about.
That was just an example I had and how some projects may come and go, and you could say that for every single one of them.
Hey, so I thought I saw something on here about doing an evaluation of hunters. Sorry, it's late. Was there something in in this 90-page document about, okay, because so my only question is, obviously, you guys wouldn't go through with that if there's potential for not having that building around much longer. You wouldn't go through with like buying the classroom chairs, because I didn't see, I mean, like.
Exactly. Yeah. No, you're spot on. We are
Okay.
conducting the evaluation at the moment. We should be
At
getting
the
the results in the next couple weeks. So obviously, we're not going to take the money to address those needs. Depending on the results of the evaluation, we'll either make any adjustment that comes back in there. And I mean, we don't have the results from that evaluation now to have in the CIP. And so we're just having what we've had in the past.
Yeah, so like, is there a way that you stream, like, data-wise, that you like see where it's connected, like any project that you'd knock out and that say, okay, no more anything for 100, just erase it all? Do you guys like kind of connect them in those ways, or?
It would be by the department, and so if you look at the
Oh,
internal
okay.
number, so recreation is REC, and then it has the year it's been identified, and then the project number.
Oh.
And so, generally speaking, projects done in the same department are related to at least an extent. But at the same time, we're not a huge city, so if we know there's a project going on at the police department, we're going to associate it with whatever else we need, and we can cross-reference that.
Okay, so you're saying that REC, like 22 is the year it was asked for?
Yep.
And then is the 01 the
It's an
priority?
identification number. It's not a priority.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
because it's hard to put the priority number, because, I mean,
For
we
sure.
could be up here in a staff meeting up here, well, I think this should be priority 1, this should be priority 3. That's not the point. This is just to have something to reference internally for us, like, when
For
we're
sure.
talking about it,
I
yeah.
was just curious. Okay, cool, thanks.
So, was it Munich that you used? They don't-
Yeah.
They don't allow.
Munetrics.
Okay. They don't have any program planning then, that meaning overall, so you have all these projects, and I'm used to seeing program plans, right? That have a whole bunch of projects in them, and you can see connections between projects. Because that would be useful, I
That's-
think, to you.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
something that I'll be working on with them, as far as it'd be like engineering costs and different type of costs that would be separated from
Yeah, I
the
mean,
entire
because
project.
it could be impactful, right? That
Yes.
you have one project that impacts another. Oh, so it'd be beneficial, it'd behoove us to do this first and then this. But it's sometimes hard to see that all the time.
I'm not sure, I can ask them, I'm not sure how they could get there. Mostly we would rely on our department heads.
Okay. I was just curious, because it might cross departments too, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
You know?
Correct. And it does look like our city manager is on Zoom right now with his hand raised. So I'm going to invite him to comment, if that's okay with the board.
Sure.
Okay.
Through the chair, Mr. Casera and Commission, good evening. Sorry that I'm remote from my domicile in Mount Clemens, but I am awaiting my hopefully COVID negative test tomorrow. A few comments that I'd like to share. In regards to the timing is due to, by charter, we are to present to the council a draft budget by the second meeting in April. And so last year, and I don't know how many years before that, this was not achieved. This year, we are going to achieve that, and we felt it was important to get this in front of you prior to presenting to council. To a couple of commissioners mentioned about kind of like having the budget and the CIP and the master plan become more congruent. We're moving in that direction, definitely, with not just the budget this year. We talked earlier this evening, we talked about goals that were approved by council, and then also the CIP and the master plan, a lot of which last year's master plan had a lot of big projects that we made, as Nick had mentioned, a lot of headway on. And then this specifically on infrastructure. And then the last point I'd like to make is that by moving this in-house, it does change the format of it last year, from last year to this year. But thanks to the efforts of both Kelly and Nick, please share with them, Nick, the cost savings you achieved by doing this.
So last year, I believe we spent just shy of $10,000 for Giffords to do it. And I mean, that's savings on a project, maybe 2 projects here that we can do in-house. And that is Giffords' goal with doing that, is more of a one-time thing, show the city the process, how to do it, kind of set it up, and then let them take the reins, essentially. But by doing this in-house with Kelly's skills, the Munetrics, which we already pay for, we're saving money in the end.
Very good.
No, I think it's great that you're doing it internally. That's perfect.
Yeah, and again, I can't stress it enough that we're very happy with the projects we're presenting. I think the format we would love to have a little bit differently. And one thing is having it be alphabetical can make it kind of confusing. We want to have it by department. That's something Munetrix doesn't offer at the moment, but I believe Kelly got a response back saying they intend to do that sooner rather than later for the next year.
Yeah, make it easier to follow, yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, if I can make one more comment, please.
Sure.
Yes, and to the point of whether or not this is if we've used this document on a couple of short fused grant opportunities, this is exactly the document we went to justify making our request for grant funds in support of some exceptionally expensive capital improvement projects, infrastructure, roads and sewers. Roads and water lines, pardon me.
Thank you.
So I didn't want to make it sound like I was being critical.
We've run out of time. Let's go
Oh,
for
we
it.
did. Oh.
Another 5 minutes.
Oh, do we need to vote again? Raise our
No,
hands?
just 5 minutes.
Oh, okay. I wasn't meaning to sound critical of your format by any means, so I apologize if that came across that way.
Not even.
Just a different view, right? And I was trying to, it was new last year, so I was trying to put my head around that format and then this format and trying to make sense of it, because it's all very new still. But I appreciate it, and I think it's great that you can use it towards grants. I didn't know it was just that way, so.
So going forward, it will be in the same
This format.
format, and I would only have to add additional projects, any changes from prior projects, whether they're completed or additional costs. So it'll be much easier going forward. I'll clean everything up, add a few little extra things for you guys, and any type of tweaks that Munetrix can provide us on how we would like to see it, as well as the Planning Commission.
Thank
Great. Yeah, thank you. Anything further, Nick?
Unless there's any questions.
I just want to, where do we land in the prioritization? So we have, anything that came in, let's call it last year, had that prioritization attached to it. The older goals don't have that. The new ones that come on board going forward will have it. Are we going to go back and have prioritization? Is that what you're saying?
I'm going to go back and fill in prioritizations for the 22
Okay.
projects.
I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, can we move on then? Let's to other business.
I would like to ask for a motion to approve that.
Motion to approve.
Yeah, we do need to have that
consideration.
approved by the Planning Commission to move forward with it.
Oh, I thought you said you didn't have to.
And consideration of draft capital improvement plan. I thought we were just considering it.
So, in other words, if we don't approve it today, it's late for council later, by the next meeting?
Yes, technically.
Well, then I guess we should make a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the capital improvement plan. Do I, sorry, I don't have it in front of me, I'm a mess right now. And bring it forth to city council? Do I have to motion the city council part?
That covers the motion, yes.
Okay.
We'll take care of that. I have a motion, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Motion second, roll call, please.
All right. Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Solomon?
Abstain.
Mr. Fitzer?
Yes.
Mr. Harrow?
Yes.
Mr. Colbert?
Yes.
Mr. Cusero?
Yes.
Mr. Nushai?
Yes.
Ms. Redmond?
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Motion passed, thank you. Number 9, other business. Anything under other business? Nothing under.
I have a question for an old business. The short rentals, what happened to them? Why aren't they on our agenda?
We haven't made any progress on that.
I'm sorry?
We have not made any progress on anything.
And are we still in line with council for them to show up, maybe?
Yes, but with competing priorities right now with the budget, the goals that they're trying to set, I think those kind of take precedence at the moment, but it's something we're still working on.
Great, thank you.
I'm sure that'll come back, yeah. Okay, planners report.
Nothing further tonight.
Nothing on planners report. Staff report and training opportunities.
You guys saw the report I put in the packet. Everyone should be registered for Citizen Plan. I know there were some issues on it. I have some information to help you guys register yourself. So I'll be sending that out tomorrow morning, and if you guys have any further questions, you know how to contact me, call me, email me, however works for you.
Just a comment, it took me about a week and a half before I got
Really?
put into the program.
Okay.
After I registered, so you might just be waiting on an email. They will email you if you do register about a week and a half later and saying now it's accessible. Okay. So it took some time.
All right, and we'll follow up with everyone with some more direction on how to do that.
I had the same experience. Once I got the email, finally, because I thought I did something wrong, or I was waiting, I'm like, hey, well, now what happens? Nothing happened for a while, then got the email, and boom, I'm in.
So you guys are both in though?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now I can then go to each module. And
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'll let them know that there was a longer delay than they alluded to the first time. So, thank you. Any other questions?
I'm not in yet, but
You're not? Okay.
no. Okay, legal update. There is no legal update because we don't have a lawyer tonight. If nobody else has any more comments, I will accept a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Support.
Motion support. Roll call, please.
Mr. Nushai?
Yes.
Ms. Redmond?
Yes.
Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Solomon?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzer?
Yes.
Mr. Harrow?
Yes.
Mr. Colbert?
Yes.
Mr. Cusero?
Yes. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.